Okay, so shall we do it? Okay, so let me open the 9th international workshop on recovering 6D object pose, R6D for short. The first edition of the workshop was at ICCV 2015, and since then we hosted one at every ECCV and ICCV. The team that organizes the workshop and the associated BOP benchmark is still growing. In fact, it almost doubled this year. We have new team members from NVIDIA, Toronto, Prague, Germany, and Korea. So this extra manpower is definitely seen on the results. I'm very happy, especially with the 2024 edition of the BOP Challenge, which I think is the biggest upgrade so far. We are a diverse team. We are from industry, from academia, from different continents, but we have at least one thing in common, and that's that we like objects. And most of us probably started with this line mode dataset from Stefan Hinterstoesser and colleagues from 2012. So let me take this DAG from Stefan as an example to explain what we do with the objects. So we typically assume that we have a 3D model of the object, which lives in some 3D coordinate frame. And then when we get an image of the duck, all we care about is detecting the duck and estimating its pose. If we assume that the duck is rigid, then the pose can be expressed as a rigid transformation, 6DoF transformation from the model coordinate frame to the camera coordinate frame. And we call this problem 6D object pose estimation. This problem is relevant for application fields such as robotic manipulation, augmented reality, autonomous driving, and medicine. And in this workshop, we cover various flavors of this problem, which is the object pose estimation and also tracking. So traditionally, we focus on a model-based setup, where we assume that the 3D models of the objects are provided to the methods. But since this year, we also start focusing on the model-free setup, where CAD models are not available and where the methods need to learn new objects just from reference images or videos. And we also focus on the seen or unseen object setup, and where the difference is whether the information about the target objects is available during the training time. Besides, we are also interested in 3D object modeling and reconstruction, in 2D object detection and segmentation, in synthesis of effective training data, and we mostly work with rigid objects, but are interested also in articulated, deformable, and also object categories. So this year we have 6 accepted papers and 2 extended abstracts. I won't go into the details of the papers. We will have opportunity to discuss with the authors during the poster session, which starts at 10:10 in this room. So on the side of the room we have the boards, and authors will be presenting their papers there. This year we had 15 reviewers. Each prepared 1 or 2 quality reviews, and I want to say big thanks to them. Together with the workshop, we organize also the 2024 edition of the BOP Challenge. So since the beginning, the mission of the BOP Challenge is to capture state-of-the-art in object-centric vision tasks. There is some history. I will go through that in more detail during the dedicated session about BOP Challenge 24. Now let me just maybe highlight that I think this year's edition is the biggest upgrade so far. We have 3 big updates. One is that we are introducing new 6D object detection task. We also introduce new flavors of most of the tasks, which is model-free. setup. So the CAD models are not available, only reference images. And we also introduced 3 new data sets from Meta, NVIDIA, and TU Dortmund. So as I said, we will go through all the details later. Now let me just give you a sneak peek of the new data sets. So we have R6D from Meta, which was captured with actual egocentric devices, specifically Project Aria and Quest 3. Then we have Handal from NVIDIA, which focuses on robotic manipulation and includes images of various tools and scenes with clutter and occlusion. And then we have the second edition of the HOPE dataset from NVIDIA and TU Dortmund. And this dataset includes images with changing illumination conditions, with a lot of clutter, occlusion, and is relevant for also robotic manipulation and robotic bin picking applications. After this opening, we will have the first talk by Xiaowei Zhou on a detector-free feature matching for pose estimation. Then he will be followed by Ben, who will have very relaxing talk on relaxing pose estimation. Then we will have coffee break here in this room at the posters. So we have posters of the workshop papers and also of papers invited from the main conference. After the coffee break, we will have Stan from NVIDIA presenting remotely on practical robotic scene awareness. And he will be followed by Jakob Engel, who will speak about contextual AI and what role object pose estimation and tracking plays in that. And we will close the workshop with a long 1-hour session on the BOP Challenge 2024, where we will introduce all the updates, analyze results, and present early bird awards. And one last note, this workshop is being streamed and recorded via Zoom. So anybody can join the Zoom meeting. No ECCV registration is needed. You can find the link on the workshop website. And I want to say big thanks to Faraz, who is sitting at the back, who is providing the streaming and recording. So Faraz is from the Project Aria team at Meta. He's actually not streaming via the Aria glasses today, at least. But he prepared, I think, very professional setup. So we have 2 cameras. One camera, that's that one, I think, right? Looking at the audience. Then we have one looking at the speaker. And everything is connected together, streamed to Zoom. And so hopefully even the virtual attendees should have the full experience. And also who is checking later the recordings should feel hopefully something similar what we feel here. So with that, let me invite the first virtual speaker, Xiaowei.
So thank you for organizing this event. And actually very sorry I cannot attend physically, but I'm still very happy to talk online. So today I would like to talk about our recent work in the past few years on detect-free feature matching and its applications in 6-DoF pose estimation. So first, I would like to give a very brief overview of the research in our group. So basically, we are working on different 3D vision problems. For example, localizing and tracking both cameras and objects in 3D scenes like this. And also, we are working on reconstructing both small objects or large scenes in for example, recently using the neural representations. And also, our recent focus is more on the reconstruction of moving people, like capturing human motion or reconstructing dense 4D representations of them. And the names of some selected works are listed below. So my talk today is mostly focused on the first part. So let's start from the problem definition of 6-DoF pose estimation. So basically, we want to estimate the relative sixth of pose, that is 3D translation, and plus 3D rotation between the camera and the object or our scene. So basically, if we want to localize the camera in the scene, we usually call it visual localization. And otherwise, if we aim to estimate the object pose in the camera coordinate, we usually call it object pose estimation. But actually, I think these two problems are mostly similar. And a commonly used pipeline for this problem is, first we build a scene model, or we call it a map, by stratified motion from reference images. And then we can match the query image with the reference images to obtain the 2D to 3D correspondences. And finally, we can solve the camera pose by the perspective endpoint algorithm, given the 2D to 3D correspondences. So in this pipeline, we can see that the feature matching is a very crucial part. So let's look at the traditional feature matching pipeline. So basically, there are 3 stages. First, given 2 input images, we first detect some key points. For example, using Harris corner detectors to detect the corners. And then for each key point, we extract some descriptor, for example, SIFT, and finally we match them using some algorithm like nearest neighbor. So in the traditional pipeline, we can see that all the detector, descriptor, and matcher, they are handcrafted. And these handcrafted features and matching algorithms are widely used nowadays in SLAM or reconstruction systems. But they will fail when there are dramatic appearance changes between images. For example, the change of weather, illumination, and the time, and there is often new constructions in some themes. So later, more and more work are developing learning-based methods for solving this problem. And a few of them are listed here. And as we know, the superpoint and superglue are the mostly used these days. And the superpoint basically uses convolutional neural networks to extract feature points and descriptors, while superglue proposed to use graph neural network to replace the, for example, nearest neighbor for the final matching. And the results of these learned features are often amazing, even in some very challenging scenarios compared to the traditional handcrafted features. And actually, they have been widely used in many commercial reconstruction or localization systems. For example, we developed the learning-based matching systems for the indoor navigation application of SenseTime. Just ignore this Chinese. All right, so everything seems perfect so far, but in practice, we found that the matching is still very challenging in many challenging cases. So taking this pair of images, for example, we can see the matching is not very good, even we use superglue. And having a close look at the results, we found that the key issue is that the detected key points are not repeatable. That is, the points detected in the left image are not appeared in the right image. So if the key points are not repeatable, we can never establish their correct correspondences because they are not the same set of 3D points. So this actually motivated us to ask the question, can we get rid of key point detector? And I think the pioneer work for detector-free feature matching is the NCNet, Neighborhood Consensus Network, published in 2018. So basically, it tries to do correlation between feature maps, and directly extract the reliable matches from the 4D correlation map using a enabled consensus network. But as we know, the 4D correlation is computationally extensive, and the confluent features are usually not very discriminative because confluents have very local receptive fields. So the results of NCNet are not as good as the detector-based methods at that time. So in CVPR 2021, we proposed LOFTR, the detect-free local feature matching with transformers. So the basic idea is that we first do dense matching on a coarse grid, and then we select reliable matches and refine the locations in the second refinement stage. And we also add, using transformers, add the self and cross attention layers on top of the convolutional backbones to make the extracted features encode more global context, so that even in the textureless regions like the wall, the extracted features are still discriminative. And this video shows that LOFTR can get more correct matches than superglue in this kind of texture poor things. And in CVPR this year, we introduced the lightweight version of LOFTR called efficient LOFTR, so which can run in real time with a single low-end GPU, as demonstrated here. And I will not go into details, but basically we accelerate LOFTR by using more lightweight backbone and the feature aggregation to reduce the size of feature map. And we replace the softmax operator with the mutual nearest neighbor. And finally, even in the fine level matching, we also use a cost to fine sorting scheme. So using these strategies, we can accelerate the speed of LOFTR by a lot. All right, next I will introduce how to use LOFTR for some pose estimation problems. And the first work I would like to introduce is detect-free stratified motion, which is published in CVPR 2024. So the problem here is actually LOFTR is not directly applicable to the classic stratified motion pipeline. For example, if you just feed the matches produced by LOFTR into CodeMap, the results will be very bad. The reason is that the so-called multi-view inconsistency issue, because LOFTR always match the grid points in the left image to the subpixel locations in the right image. So at the end, the pairwise matches, they cannot form a long tracks among multiple images. And as we know that the stratified motion systems, they require long trajectories of feature points to do the good reconstruction. So to solve this problem, we propose an extended version of LOFTR, which aims to solve the multi-view matching problem. Basically, it also has two stages, the coarse reconstruction stage and the refinement stage. And in the coarse reconstruction stage, we only match the grid points on multiple views so that we can get long feature tracks. But if we only match grid points, the precision, actually the pixel location, will not be very accurate. So the reconstruction accuracy is also very low. So to improve the precision, then in the refinement stage, we iteratively refine the feature tracks and also the reconstruction. And for the feature track refinement, we train actually a transformer to update the pixel locations of the initial tracks. And for reconstruction, we just run boundary adjustment to optimize the point cloud and the camera poses with the better key point locations. And finally, we can improve both the accuracy of feature tracks and also the camera pose and point cloud. And here shows the comparison between our method and the detector-based baseline, which is the combination of superpoint and superglue and PixSFN. And we can see for these texture pro scenes, we are still able to reconstruct accurate camera poses as well as the point clouds, while the detect-based method failed. And with the accurate camera poses, we can reconstruct the detailed surface model of the objects with, for example, news. And here are two challenging outdoor scenes. One is from the deep sea, and the other one is from the moon surface. And both of them were downloaded from YouTube. And we can see even for these very challenging scenes with very poor illumination and heavy motion blur, we are still able to reconstruct the camera poses and finally the nerve representations of the scenes. And with this approach, we also won the Image Matching Challenge 2023. But of course, we also use some other engineering tricks to win the challenge. But the detect-free based stratified motion actually plays a very important role in this in the winning entry. All right, so next I will introduce how to use Ranftl for object pose estimation. So our work is called one pose, and the follow-up one is called one pose plus plus. So basically the motivation here is we want to estimate the object pose without CAD models of the objects. And what we need to represent the object is simply a video scan around the object. Then given a new video of the objects, we can detect the objects and estimate their poses, as we can see in this video. So here is the basic pipeline of one pose and one pose plus plus. So first, we reconstruct the stratified motion point cloud model of the object from the video scan. And based on the reconstructed object point cloud, we can estimate the 2D to 3D correspondences by matching the query image with the video scan frames. And finally, we can solve the object pose by the PMP algorithm. And this approach has a few advantages. First, it only needs a few pose annotated images as input. And we don't need the accurate CAD models of the objects. And more importantly, actually this approach, it doesn't require additional network training for each object. As we know, in many previous methods, we need to train the network for each object instance or for each class. So this is not very friendly in real applications. So here I would like to recall that this kind of approach for object pose estimation actually is not new. Back to 1990s, people are also doing this. For example, David Low proposed SIFT to match the reference images with the query image to localize these objects. This actually is exactly how we solve the object pose estimation problem at the early stage of computer vision. But at that time, feature matching is not strong enough. So later, we still need to use CAD models for edge-based tracking or training neural networks. But now, I think if we have strong enough feature matches, we don't need CAD models anymore. And here are some AR effect demos with the pose estimated by one pose. Finally, I would like to introduce another work called Spatial Tracker, which aims to track dense pixels across a video. So compared to traditional optical flow methods that only compute motion between two frames, here we want to track dense motion in a relatively long sequence. So the original motivation of this work is whether we can apply feature matching to the problem of feature tracking. And we found this actually not very straightforward, as if we iteratively match every 2 frames each time, there will be drafting problems. Then CodeTracker was published, which exactly solved this issue. So basically, it first initialized tracks and then iteratively refines the pixel locations of the initial tracks using a transformer. This is actually very similar to what we did in the Detector-free transfer motion, where we also initialize the tracks and refine them with a transformer. So from the comparison between these two works, we can see that actually nowadays the frameworks for for the feature matching and the feature tracking are unified in some senses. But there is still a critical challenge to solve. Actually, it's the occlusion problem. For example, look at the left video. The points originally at the background were occluded by the car and then mistakenly tracked as part of the car. And the right video shows that the points on the left wing of the butterfly can be tracked, cannot be tracked correctly because of the self-occlusion. So these 2 examples demonstrate that there is an inherent limitation of tracking points in 2D. First, the correspondences in 2D are not bijection because of the occlusion. And secondly, it is very hard to use the structural prior, such as the as rigid as possible constraint in 2D space, as the rigidity of object is not preserved after 3D to 2D projection. So these observations actually motivate us to think about if we can lift the pixels to 3D space and track them in 3D space, then the above problems can be solved. So we tried this. We use an off-the-shelf depth estimator to estimate the depth map for each frame, and we use the estimated depth map to lift all the pixels to the 3D space. And for tracking, we still use similar strategies like CodeTracker and the Detector-free transfer motion, which iteratively update the feature tracks with a transformer. But here, we also include as rigid as possible constraint in the training. And here is a qualitative comparison between spatial tracker and the baselines. And for CodeTracker, we can see most of the results, the tracks are very good, but it misses some points on the right leg of this person when it is occluded by the body. And the spatial tracker is still able to track all of the points very accurately. And here are the results for the butterfly. And the kicking of Cristiano Ronaldo, we can clearly see the vibrating trajectory of the ball in the air, which explains why his kicking is very hard to save. And as we have lifted the points to 3D, we can actually directly get the 3D tracks of the points, and as visualized here. And finally, I would like to say that with these very promising pixel tracking methods, now we are able to track the 6-DoF pose of any unseen objects without knowing its CAD models. Here, what we did was we used SAM, segment anything, to get the masks of all objects. And then we run feature tracker on each of them. And finally, we run SLAM for each of them simultaneously, getting their pose and point clouds. And here are more results showing the simultaneous reconstruction and tracking with the feature tracks produced by spatial tracker. So here we don't need CAD models anymore, and we can handle any unseen objects. And combined with one pose, we are also able to relocalize the object when it disappears and appear again. All right, so this is roughly what we want to share today. And in conclusion, I want to say, even in the big model era nowadays, I think feature matching is still one of the most fundamental problems in computer vision. And I believe detect-free feature matching is very promising because it can resolve the key point repeatability issue. And it can, this framework for the detect-free matching, actually it can unify the feature matching with feature tracking. And actually we can regard the tracking problem as a multi-frame matching problem. And also I want to say that this kind of end-to-end matching framework is differentiable, so it can be trained end-to-end. So it is very easy to scale up the data size for training. And we believe if we can do the very large scale training, this kind of feature matching methods can have very good generalization ability. And even it can generalize to different modalities. And this actually is another project we are working on. And finally, with the detect-free feature matching, some of the downstream algorithms need renovated. For example, the object pose estimation and probably the SLAM system. And I believe these are going to be happening in very soon. And all the code of these works actually are available at the GitHub page of our group. Okay, finally, I would like to thank the students and the collaborators for these great works. Okay, thank you. Questions are welcome.
Thanks a lot for the talk. So are there any questions? We have a microphone in the back. Okay, maybe I have one. How do you retrieve the scale of the objects when in one pose, for example?
So for one pose, actually, if basically it doesn't have the absolute scale, but for example, if we capture the video scan of the object with a mobile phone, and it has the IMU, it can tell us the scale. of the object, actually the scale of the point cloud, then we can get the right scale.
Okay, thank you. I think there's one other question in the back.
Hi, yeah, I have a quick question. Thank you so much for the great talk, and also I'm always inspired by your work. And my question is about implicit relative pose estimation. So I understand like key point matching is like pretty fundamental in computer vision research, but at the same time, I know like there are a lot of implicit relative pose estimations are coming out, such as ray diffusion, ray topologies work. So I want to just get your thought on it. Yeah, and yeah, thank you.
I think it's a very great question. And we are also working on some projects that we use the big models like diffusion models or transformers to directly estimate and track poses from images or from videos. And we usually actually found the results are amazing if we can scale up the training data. But I think these two types of approach, they are not they're just they can compensate for each other, right? For example, if we want to robustness and we want to solve the pose in very extremely challenging cases, for example, very small overlap, then we can use the like diffusion or transformer to directly predict pose. But if we want to get very accurate pose, very precise results, then I think still the feature matching is still what we need. And sometimes we can combine these two, and I think there are a lot of recent works doing this.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. So our next speaker is Ben. He leads a research group at TU Munich, working on many related topics like unseen object pose estimation and also model free. And yeah, today he will talk about relaxing pose estimation. Many thanks.
So this is a 3D sensor. It measures distances. So you can see in color coding the distance. Blue is close, red is far. This one is a close range time of light sensor to measure distances. Even common everyday objects, such as this glass, pose severe challenges to the sensor. It basically becomes invisible to the sensor. So if you base your pose measurements on this, it's going to be a hard task. There are also other objects which are very common in everyday scenarios, such as cutlery, that pose other severe challenges to the sensor. The photons would bounce off this reflective surface to a wall back, and it appears much further than it actually is. If you want a robot to interact with it, get a pose. In the best case, you don't get a grasp. In the worst case, you basically smash the glass. So these are not cherry-picked examples. These are objects with which we interact every day. If we want to have a robot that helps us in our household, we really need to solve these issues. My name is Ben, and today I want to provide my view on the trends in the field observed in the last couple of years, specifically regarding unseen objects and those kind of visual challenges. So we'll go a little bit around the most recent literature and also some history. So by no means this is going to be complete, but I think it will provide us a basis for discussion, especially now and during the lunch break. So over the past years, I was super lucky to work with an amazing team of people and learn from them. So the ideas presented today really arise from this collaboration. So with those great people mentioned here, but also many more. So actually, the photos also will help you to find them in the room. There are some people here and also present during the conference. So I will indicate the main people that pushed on the individual projects, such that you can also find the faces later. So let's start off with a little bit of a problem definition. So a typical pose problem would be that you want to align a 3D model with your current observation and get the 3 degrees in translation and the 3 degrees of freedom in rotation. There are many flavors to this task where you can change some of those aspects. Of course, we cannot look into all today, but I want to emphasize on a couple of them, especially regarding data input. If it's not just an RGB, but maybe a depth map, RGB P with polarization, data, relax some constraints if we don't want to learn this with full supervision, but maybe relaxing the supervision signal to weak labels or training in self-supervised fashion. Also to unseen objects if we have not seen them during training and only have available CAD model at test time. And also to the kind of visual ambiguities that can arise and challenges where the problem is not well defined with a single pose anymore, but we need to talk about pose distributions. A typical pipeline looks like this. You would get an input 3D model and an input image, and then you run a segmentation method on this image input, and then do the core pose estimation task, and then finally run a refiner. There are very nice methods that do work on the first part of this segmentation, like CNOS or others, or on the refiner like GenFlow and Megapose and so. So in the core of the talk, we will concentrate on this middle part, the pose estimation, basically starting from a cropped image and its 3D rendering or 3D CAD model. So let's first talk about this 3D CAD model. If you render 3D CAD models, you typically get something like this. So this geometrically is very, very nice, but it really doesn't look like what you get in reality. So if you take a real image, it should look something like this. So the first thing I want to talk is about how we can get this a little bit more into the real domain. But labeling these things is quite tricky. So in TextPose, we provided a method that gets the best out of both worlds. So the 3D CAD model provides you good geometry, and real data provides you how it looks like. A way to basically get the best out of both worlds without labels on real data is by first training your favorite model on synthetic data. So you create a synthetic data set, and then you train your favorite pose estimation network on this. You will get some results, but they are not perfect. So these results, they will create you some weak labels for the poses on real data. So you have a set of images that are unlabeled. And then this real data weak labels can be used to enhance the capability of your synthesization pipeline to render more realistic images. And in TextPose, we provide a loss such that you can train the texture part of your creation pipeline to do that better. We do that with a NERF, as this was state of the art at that time, but it can work with any other method. So you would basically get the geometry from the synthetic renderings, which is pixel perfect, and then just get the appearance from your real data. So you get an improved dataset with this because you can re-render new images and then use this improved dataset that looks now a bit more realistic to refine your pose estimator. In practice, you can run this a couple of times. It converges relatively fast after 2 or 3 iterations, and you get some results that then look like this. So you would get a synthesization pipeline that renders you more realistic looking images without having lost the capability of geometry, in particular the poses of your synthesizer. So in practice, also at time of this work, this was the first work that did that without additional supervision, like weak labels or others, while still overcoming the accuracy. So you can put that into any pipeline. Then related works picked up on this, and also, as we have heard already, they provide semi-dense models ad hoc, or use other NERF models with weak labels to train this, or the more recent work, Foundation Pose. They additionally have a heavy augmentation pipeline that provides very, very nice augmentation using a diffusion model and a large language model, but still represent this, or can represent, in the absence of a CAD model, your 3D objects with the data from real images. So these methods, they take real data to build 3D models and partly circumvent the difficulties in annotating them. But how do the labels in current datasets look like? Labeling 60 pose is very tricky. So ground truth label quality sometimes is a bit off, and some datasets simplify the annotation by only annotating a bounding box around the object. Viewpoint coverages in many commonly available datasets, also for category level, they do typically circle around the object and don't have a dense pose coverage. This is problematic. If we learn with this data, we will not generalize to unseen poses which have not been experienced in training. So we wanted to overcome some of these issues, and it, in a nutshell, took us 3 years to develop a pipeline that can help to get high quality annotations also at room scale. We started off with focal at a very corner case, with the help of a robot in a corner of a room, scaled that up to room scale, and also included now bigger objects, while maintaining an accuracy even if we have challenging material at roughly 1 to 2 millimeters for full representation of the room and also the poses. So HouseCat60, the pose version of this, comprises 41 scenes that have various objects in those scenes. In total, 194, including those photometrically challenging categories like cutlery and glasses, which appear in everyday scenarios. Also, we specifically looked that we have dense pose coverage of the poses of the camera, and added some new modalities, which I will come back to in a bit, that may give us some new advantages. So how did we get to that level of accuracy? We had a multi-stage process in annotating the data and creating this data set. First, we scanned every single object with a structured light scanner, then calibrated a annotation tool, a tip, towards a ceiling-mounted camera system, which we then used to point towards parts of the objects which are placed in the scene in an attempt to register those 3D models to the current scene. We calibrated everything with respect to an absolute camera system, which is a ceiling-mounted camera system, and then moved the camera around the room while recording everything in hardware synced acquisition, and had a refinement stage to make the labels pixel perfect. So this provides us a digital twin from which we can also use the 3D models to annotate grasping points, or to get grasping points, which we can then also put into the scene. So they come with it. We have around 10 million grasping labels as well for robotics tasks. And you can see here, even under heavy occlusions on photometric challenges, those false labeled colors. So we have some plans also with the organizers of the workshop to put that in to future versions of the BOP challenge. So now we have those new sensors I talked about. Let's look into one in particular, namely polarization. So polarization is a property of light. Basically, when you think of light, we typically think of an electromagnetic wave traveling through space. Polarization is the oscillation direction of this wave. And when unpolarized light, such as the sunlight, hits a surface, it becomes partly polarized under some angles. And with a polarization sensor, RGBP camera, we can acquire 4 images with miniature polarization filters on the color filter array, and that are rotated with respect to each other. So we get those 4 images, and from these we can calculate an angle of polarization and a degree of polarization, and calculate with Fresnel equation some plausible surface normals. So that those depend on the surface property, whether the surface is specular or diffuse. In the diffuse case, you get 1 solution, and in the specular case, you get 2. So while this ambiguity may be a bit disappointing, the cool part about this pipeline is that it's completely invertible. So given you have a depth map, you can calculate a normal, and from a normal you can calculate 2 plausible degrees of polarization. Why is that interesting? Because now, if you have those calculated starting from your depth, you can calculate a physics loss by comparing the synthesized degree of polarization with your actual measurements. So where could this depth come from? This depth could come from, for instance, a pose estimator and a rendered model. In a polarimetric pose prediction and its successor, self-supervised polarimetric pose prediction, we looked at this in particular. So how can polarization help with those photometrically challenging cases? So we put polarization info, basically these 4 images, into the pipeline together with pre-calculated degree of polarization and the angle of polarization, and also all possible physical priors, so the normals. And then the model was asked to estimate the pose of those objects. And we were particularly interested in these objects that are photometrically challenging, like those transparent objects and reflective objects, where polarization could be a help. And we also investigated this idea of inverting the pipeline to self-supervise it. It not only outperforms RGB methods, but only but also outperforms the, at that time, best RGBD methods, especially with photometrically challenging objects such as cutlery. Since RGBP is fully passive, it also requires only a minimal amount of energy, so you can use it also for mobile applications. You can see here the results of full synthetic training, that's red, and then after applying some self-supervision with real data without labels in green relative to the blue ground truth. So cool, we can deal with photometric challenges, but we may not always have the 3D CAD model at hand, at least during training time. So what if we have this task where this 3D CAD model is only available at test time? OSOP is one of the first works that looked into that, and a template approach basically does a one-shot segmentation on the 2D. So you get a segmentation on 2D, and you can then use the template renderings and associate their features with a current observation to get a template matching of a current crop. So you would have a detected object and a match template with it, and the match template can also provide you 2D, 3D correspondences. So you can input those segmentations and the correspondences into a pipeline that associates the matches between that to get dense 2D matches, which can then later be used by PNP or CAPTCH to calculate your pose estimate. So this is training free, and you get a training free with the CAD model at test time, and you can correlate this by training on a large data set and also extend to unseen objects that you have not experienced during training. So GigaPose is a recent framework that uses also such an idea, but provides a very nifty split of the pose parameters into 4 degrees of freedom pose estimate for the template matching, and then regressing the remaining 2 on the correspondence part. So this provides a very efficient pipeline that also works with the noisy sinus inputs. So you can run this very fast now and still solve a 2D to 2D registration task. So we thought, can we also do that with 3D? And taking some inspiration from 3D registration literature, where basically the task is you want to register 2 point clouds to one another, we thought whether we can combine that with pose estimation. So typical pipeline there would start off with these 2 point clouds. You calculate a descriptor that's both locally aware and also globally aware with the transformer literature, and then you align these point clouds by feature matching. The thing is, such descriptors, they are only aware of that geometry. So if you have an object like this, that is this pyramid that has differently colored sides, you would get descriptors that repeat on the different sides. With MatchU, we wanted to create a pipeline that's also aware of the appearance, such that you can join the RGB information with that descriptor, and then get descriptors also on symmetric objects that are the same, even though you don't have symmetry labels. So MatchU works in the following way. You input an RGBD input together with a 3D CAD model, which not necessarily has been seen during training, and then learns a descriptor for both the 3D model and the current observation. And then by matching these descriptors with respect to each other, you can get the 60 pose of the not necessarily seen object during training. So then consecutive works really expand on that idea and do provide 2D, 3D matching even further. So found pose, for instance, uses a foundation model Dino and a trained bag of words approach to basically get matches between those rendered CAD models and a current observation. And Freeze, which is going to be presented here at ECCV, is completely training free. So basically they take this idea of matching on 2D using the foundation model Dino and the local descriptor Jedi to get the geometry description, such that you can build a descriptor for your current in training unseen object and the current observation. And then you are only left with the registration task between those two. So we can deal with unseen objects, but how about ambiguous cases? So those may appear also in everyday scenarios. So in this case here, the problem is actually well defined, but for all of those cases, where you have an image like this, they are all equally correct, right? So how do we need to change our problem formulation? So instead of asking for a specific pose, we can then ask for a distribution of poses. MHP was one of the first works that looked into this problem from a multi-hypothesis perspective. So multiple hypotheses were predicted, and from those, the distributions of a Bingham, which is an antipodally symmetric distribution, were regressed. Another approach is taken by SURF EMB, which looks at it from a correspondence perspective. So instead of predicting multiple hypotheses, they directly learn dense correspondence and then continuous distribution. One work that expands on this idea will be Alanist, which is actually the poster on the side here, and will be later presented at ECCV on Tuesday. Asks the question: if we have a CAD model, can we extend this with a single label? And yes, we can. So if we have the CAD model and the SURF-EMB features, and only one ground truth pose annotation, we can extend this information using those two experts to a pose distribution, and then estimate the pose distribution. So let's quickly recap on what we've seen today, and then talk about possible futures. So we talked about different data input, where polarization might be a property that can be promising for photometrically challenging objects. We also talked about pose distribution. We talked about the case where you have an object that you have not seen during training time, and also relaxed some of the supervision signals. Of course, there's much more to explore. I'm happy to discuss, but I want to specifically ask the question where the field could move in the future, based on these ideas. So one direction, especially regarding making things work on everyday scenarios, are open vocabulary tasks. So one promising direction is, we have seen it also in the talk before, is to ask the question whether pose estimation is actually the same as correspondence matching. Orion, or Orion and Orion, the extension, basically look at the problem where the object is not represented by a 3D model anymore, but by a text prompt. And POPE uses only a single 2D image to represent the model. And then the task is basically to find correspondences between this representation or between a template and a query. Another direction towards this open vocabulary could be to ask the question whether pose estimation is actually a 3D reconstruction problem. So Spark, which is going to also be presented at ECCV, takes a couple of input images and then uses a diffusion model to both simultaneously predict the Knox map and intermediate views in order to do a reconstruction and also then create a mesh. And Nope takes a bit of a different approach, but in the same spirit, where the input is a single 2D image and they generate relative pose embeddings. So if you take your image, you generate relative pose embeddings, and then you can match ex post between those embeddings. What is cool if you match between those embeddings is you get basically a distribution for free, so bringing together some of these ideas we covered before. With these open vocab ideas, we may move one step closer to actually making this household robotics or pose estimation for augmented reality in everyday scenarios a more realistic future step. Here you can find the link for the HouseCAD data, including those photometrically challenging objects and also the accurate labels and the new modalities. Feel free to break it, work around with it, even if we don't have it yet with Bob, you can already use the data. So while our little robot here cleans up the table using RGB images only, because depth maps don't work so well for those glasses, I'm quite excited to discuss these ideas with you.
Thanks a lot, Ben. It was amazing talk. Great summary of the latest works. I think that will be very useful for especially the upcoming CDPR submissions for writing related work. and also, yeah, nice sneak peeks or teasers of what might happen next. So thanks a lot for that. Maybe we can take one or two quick questions, and then we can move to the posters, which are in this room. And then at 11 a.m., we should start ideally sharp. We will have Stan as a remote speaker. So maybe one, two questions.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Fabio.
Yeah, when we determine the pose of an object, how do we guarantee that it's correct? So like if we have a robot and we have to interact with this object, how do we know if the pose we estimated is correct? Like here I saw a lot of methods, but how do you achieve like a guarantee?
So I mean, I think there are two caveats to this. So one would be you can look at it in relation to your label, of course. So if you want to evaluate on a data set, and then the label needs to be correct. But I think in practice this is doesn't matter so much. So eventually, if you have a pose that's in line with your measurements, for instance, a depth map, or so, you can get some guarantees or verifications for it. But it even doesn't matter so much as long as you could interact with it, like for instance, grasping. And then as long as your pose is as accurate that you can retrieve some grasping options in a robotic scenario, then I think you are fine. And eventually, I think to evaluate this is a failure or correct cases, and in many robotics literatures, they basically do it. So a grasp would be correct if the object can be grasped, or it fails if it's incorrect. So I think depending on what you want to evaluate, there are caveats to it.
So maybe one follow-up question on this. We have been discussing that already a bit, but how fast is the simulator of the grasping that I guess you used for annotating the house cut, right, with the grasping poses? So like if it is fast enough, right, then maybe we could even use it for some like BOP pose metric, that if you submit pose estimates, the simulator could verify like how likely it is that with these poses the grasping would be successful.
Yeah, yeah, that is definitely an option and possible, and those things also work fast. I think they have a bit of an issue depending on our objects, right? So we start with this 3D model, right? And the 3D model, they at least in those 3D models we are using, there's no baked change in viewpoint or so. So the appearance of it might not reflect fully what is happening in reality. So I think while it might be a good idea to evaluate this in silico, it might not fully reflect what happens in reality. Also, subtle changes in your objects, if it's not like those boxes, for instance, they are not perfectly rigid. So I think those subtleties, they are not captured in current simulators, and they really matter for real applications. Second is, if we want to work with depth, you have seen it in the beginning, simulating those artifacts is super tricky. That's why we came up with this whole data set where we have actually real depth and the 3D model, because simulating either TOF or active stereo or any other sort of noise is very tricky. And I think the full in silico replica of it is not probably the way which would one-to-one transfer to real applications.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other question? Okay, maybe last one.
Thank you. So you mentioned open vocabulary pose estimation. I was wondering if there are any works that can estimate a pose as a result of the future pose as a result of an action, that you have like the initial pose and you give it an action, it can predict a set of future trajectories, or if not, if this is an easy task.
So I think there are some works that predict possible future states, and like for instance, there is I need to look it up. But there are some works that look into future states. I think where it becomes difficult is that the future is not a one-to-one map. Like we need to think really about distributions. Like there are many possible futures for a certain given input, and there I think is still some room for improvement. So I think people have not looked into that so much so far.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ben, a lot again. And let's move to the posters.
Yeah, thanks. If you have more questions, reach out to the posters.
Hello, everyone. Please welcome back to the 9th edition of the workshop Recovering 6D Pose. We have two nice talk this morning by Xiaowei and Benjamin. And now we are very happy to have Stan Birchfield and Jakob Engel from Meta. And yeah, so Stan is principal research scientist and senior research manager at NVIDIA. He worked mainly in the intersection of computer vision and robotics. This year, we're very happy to have Stan as a senior member of the BOP Challenge. And yeah, Stan, we are looking forward to your talk on practical robot scenes awareness.
All right, thanks, Gwen, for the introduction. Thanks, everybody, for coming to the talk. Wish I could be there with you. I hope you all have an amazing time in Bonn this week. I assume you can hear me. If not, let me know. So yeah, today I want to talk about practical robotic scene awareness. So one of the the big challenges in robotics and robotic manipulation is to be able to take a robot, put it in a new environment, teach it a new task, and do that in a short period of time without having to write a lot of code. And if and when we can do this, we will sort of revolutionize flexible manufacturing and manufacturing at small and medium enterprises where they need robots to be able to do a new task without paying the expensive, see a video that we put together about 10 years ago in a research group that I was part of, and the idea was to teach the robot to make a cup of coffee. On the right, you see a video more recently, and so the question is: Are we actually making progress? It does seem like at first glance that the videos are quite similar. So in this talk, I'm going to be presenting work from our research group, and as well as work from that. All this work is due to their hard work, and I want to make sure they get full credit for it. So when I joined the video a number of years ago, one of the first projects we worked on was this DOPE, Deep Object Pose Estimation. And the idea here was to take an RGB image, feed it into a neural network. It's a very simple network that outputs a set of belief maps, one for each vertex of the bounding cuboid, as well as one in the centroid. So there are 8 vertices plus the centroid. That's 9 belief maps. And the idea here is to estimate the 60 pose of the object, but also to simultaneously detect the object, and even if there are multiple instances. So the cool thing about this work was it was able to do both detection and pose estimation at the same time, and it was reasonably robust to pose and occlusion, lighting, and so forth. We trained only on synthetic data, and this is a theme you'll see throughout the talk. We sort of discovered at the time that synthetic data was the best way to train these sort of networks because it's very hard to get high quality labeled real data. Also, the sim to real gap is the sim to real gap is was already closing at the time and has since just become even more even smaller. And then this is a comparison of our approach with the state of the art at the time. And on the right hand side, you can see that even though by today's standards it's a little bit noisy and wiggly, the detections and remain fairly robust to extreme lighting changes and so forth. So the drawback of DOPE is that we have to train one network per instance, and so the idea is if you want to use DOPE in your own, say, research lab, you have to download our code, download our weights, and it's only going to work on those objects that we trained. And the YCB objects from the previous video, there are only a few of them. So we asked ourselves, how can we expand that to more objects, and how can we expand it to objects that other researchers around the world can access in their labs? And so our goal here is to come up with a set of objects that are accessible, that you can download and that you can purchase online, and then download our code and weights, and be able to just out of the box do pose estimation in your own lab. And so we found these toy grocery objects online. The advantage of these is because they're toys; they don't have real, food with expiration dates and so forth. The labels don't change because due to advertising and so forth. And at the top, you see the real objects, and the bottom a synthetic rendering where we took these objects, scanned them in our lab, and have 3D textured models of them. And our hope was that people would be able to put these together. And so this is a success story here where someone in a different research lab, not affiliated with ours, took our code, downloaded it and the weights, purchased the objects online, and then put it all together into a real end-to-end robotic system for pick and place. We also then asked ourselves, how can we get a data set to support what we call functional grasping? So we want the robot to grasp the object in a functional way, like along the handle in particular. And so if you imagine trying to teach the robot to execute a task like pick up a hammer and hammer a nail, it has to be able to grasp the hammer in the right way, and it also has to know what the orientation of the hammer is as it's winding up and releasing. And so we grabbed a number of objects that you might find in your garage or in your kitchen, hammers and screwdrivers and ladles and pots and pans and that sort of thing. And we captured video sequences of these objects in various backgrounds. And we used a NERF-like process, which is a fast version of NERF called Incident GP, to do the 3D reconstruction of these objects. We used ColeMap for doing the camera pose estimation. We put all this together into a system that allowed us to get very high quality annotations of these objects, both their poses and their pixel-wise segmentation and so forth. We're all used to seeing 2D pixel-wise segmentation, but what this is actually 3D segmentation. So we actually have 3D reconstructions, and then we can project those segmentations onto the image, which is what you're seeing here. And both the Hope and the Handle data sets are used in the BOP challenge this year. You'll hear more about these later. So in addition to pose estimation, a robot needs to know where the obstacles are. And so to do this, it needs a 3D reconstruction of the scene. And so at the bottom of this slide, you'll see our pipeline for this, where we took a monocular RGB video sequence. We ran ColeMap to get the camera poses. We ran this fast NERF for instant NGP to do the 3D reconstruction, from which we calculated the SDF, the signed distance function. And then we can feed that then to a robot control algorithm for the robot to reach the goal. And we'll talk more about control later. But for now, I just want to focus on the 3D reconstruction. We were actually pleasantly surprised how well this worked. Our question was really what kind of 3D reconstruction accuracy can we get from an off-the-shelf, state-of-the-art, greatest NERF reconstruction algorithm. And so at the top, you see the classical algorithms, ColeMap and so forth. And then at the bottom, you see even a neural reconstruction engine, ISDF, that is based on depth images, doesn't produce as crisp of object boundaries and shape and so forth, simply because depth images are fairly noisy. And so what was cool here is that just with RGB alone, we're able to get fairly accurate reconstructions of the scene. And then we asked ourselves, well, how can we combine these things? So if we want to get tracking and reconstruction at the same time, how do we do that? So what you see here is our bundle STF system, where given an unknown object, we can detect that we can track the object in its full 60 pose over time in the video sequence while simultaneously reconstructing the object. And all it needs to get started is a 2D mask of the object in the first frame. Everything else is automatic. So this is the architecture of the system. I'm not going to go into great detail. It's fairly complex, but at a high level, you can see that the top half of this slide is basically a SLAM system. So two consecutive frames from the video come in to a video segmentation network. We get an object mask. Key points are matched between the two frames, from which we get the relative camera pose, and that camera pose is then fed to a pose graph optimization, which is basically a bundle adjustment system, and that's where the bundle SDF gets its name. So the top is a SLAM system, and then the bottom is a field to just opacity as in a classical nerf, and or vanilla nerf. So what we have here is a network that encodes both the geometry and the appearance of the object, and uses that to reconstruct it over time as it's being processed. So here you see the results of our system. The top middle is ours, and you can see compared to ground truth, it's fairly indistinguishable. Even on an object like this that has very little texture, it has very thin portions to it, and it's undergoing severe occlusion. This is, and I should emphasize, this is all causal processing. So we're processing one frame at a time in essentially real time as the frames are coming in. We're not looking at the future, not doing any kind of batch processing or anything like that. And then bundle SDF has been used in a number of projects. This is one where we collaborated with some researchers at UT Dallas. They're putting together this HOCAP data set. And so bundle SDF is being used to reconstruct the 3D shape of these objects and then track them in over time in their full 6D orientation and position. Okay, and then our next project was Foundation Pose, and Foundation Pose is essentially bundle SDF split into two parts. So we took bundle SDF, the code. There are a lot of additional details, but at a high level, it's we took the reconstruction part and made that into an offline component. So we're doing 3D reconstruction offline for multiple frames, and then we took the pose estimation part, and that's the online part of the Foundation Pose. And so what we get is a full 6D pose estimation system that can also track. It generalizes novel objects, and it's fairly accurate, robust, and it's in real time. Instead of doing the 3D reconstruction, if you already have a texture CAD model, we can just feed that directly into the pose estimation system. So what that does is that gives us 4 separate problems that Foundation Pose is able to solve. On the left, you have 2 different kinds of inputs. If you have a texture CAD model, it'll take it. If you don't, then you need to capture a few reference images this is similar to what we can side useful image and post in that image. Or if you have a video sequence, we can run it in a loop to track the object pose over time. So in all 4 of these problems, we're getting state-of-the-art results. So there's a spider diagram of the results compared to other methods on all 4 of these problems. But for simplicity, let's focus just on one of these 4 problems, which is model-based pose estimation. This is with a single input image and with a texture CAD model estimating the pose of the object in that image. We use an LLM aided data augmentation, so we get these 3D models from Objaverse, and then to increase the diversity of data that we're training the system on, we use this LLM to paste the object with various textures. And so you can take the same object and get multiple textures on it, which again vastly increases the diversity, which helps the algorithm to generalize to new situations. So here's an overview of the system sort of at a high level. We have the input RGBD image coming in, and then we sample the viewing sphere. So we have these global pose hypotheses. One of these hypotheses will give us a particular pose as an initial guess. We render the object according to that pose. We then crop the original image as a result of that pose as well. This is the pose condition cropping. And then we compare both of those using this pose refiner. The pose refiner will then do a local optimization of the guess of that hypothesis to refine it according to the image. And we do this multiple times with multiple hypotheses, and then the pose ranker takes all those results and finds the best one. So just zooming in just a little bit, the pose refinement network takes, again, the rendered image and the pose condition input crop, feeds those just to some encoders, and then it goes through a transformer, a couple of transformers with linear coders that, with linear layers that then outputs the delta rotation and the delta translation. That gives us the refined pose, and then we iterate this until it converges. On the right-hand side, you can see each row is a different hypothesis, and over time, each of these hypotheses is sort of snapping into place the best it can according to a local optimization. Some of them snap better than others based on how far away they are from the actual global minimum. So this is a feedback loop here, and it ends up aligning both the shape and the texture in an end-to-end manner. And then the pose ranking system takes that result and finds the best one. And the way it does it, on the left-hand side, you can see the network that maps each hypothesis to a feature vector. So we have K hypotheses on the far left. Those yield both a pose condition rendering and a pose condition input crop, similar to what we saw on the previous slide. Those get fed to encoders, and then the transformer with the multi-head self-attention, average pooling, gives us a 512-dimensional feature vector for each of these hypotheses. So we have K hypotheses, and we have K as input, and then we have K output feature vectors. And you could take each of these feature vectors and learn to map it to a score, but that's hard to do, and also it would not leverage the global context of everything. So instead, what we do is we take all of the K feature vectors, feed them to another multi-head self-attention with a linear layer after that, which then allows the network to see the global context. It can compare all of these different feature vectors, all these different poses to find a unique ranking for them. And if all goes well, then the top rank is going to be the best one. And the reason this is needed is because it's very hard to compute a distance or even to define a distance once the poses are beyond a certain threshold. So when the pose is close to the global minimum, the distance is sort of meaningful. Once it gets far away, it's hard. So like, for example, here in pose A and pose B, they're both off by a large margin, and one of them's a 180-degree flip, the other is a 90-degree. It's very hard to say, though, sort of visually which one is better. And so that makes it very hard to learn scores. But with our global context, which we're calling here hierarchical comparison, then we're able to get an accurate ranking, and that allows the top ranked pose to actually bubble up to the top and be the best. So on the 6D localization for unseen objects task of the BOP challenge, we were able to achieve #1, so we're very thankful for that and pleased to see that result. So, and then we were there for almost 10 months. So we finally, some other methods have come to the fore in the last month that have surpassed us. But as far as I know, ours is still the only one with code available online. So as other people start releasing their code, we'll lose that distinction too. But right now, if you want to download our code, I think ours is still has the best results. Okay, so that's pose estimation. We can take that same pose refinement network and apply it to sequential frames of a video sequence. You can see right here where right behind the mustard bottle, the can of soup was almost completely occluded, and yet we're able to track consistently through that in a way that's almost indistinguishable from ground truth. So we're pretty pleased with these results. And then we can also, as I mentioned earlier, we can do model free. So if you don't have a CAD model, we can take essentially that part of bundle SDF that does the 3D reconstruction, and we can do this neural SDF based rendering. So with a few reference images of an object, we can get this implicit representation of its appearance and its geometry, and then use those to do a rendering, a neural rendering of the object without having a CAD model. And that allows us to work on novel objects that we've never seen before. So here, for example, is a drill in our lab that we didn't have a CAD model for. We took a few reference images, and then we use neural rendering to do the 60 pose estimation sequentially per frame as the video plays. And this works for other objects too. So this is a different lab where we have other objects that were showing that foundation pose can estimate the pose in real time. Oh, and I should mention too, foundation pose doesn't do detection, but you can pair it with a detection system. And so what you're seeing here is, as the novel object is fed to the system, it's able to detect it, and then once it's detected, it feeds it to foundation pose to do the 60 pose. So, and then this is just another video of similar kind of objects in a different environment, and showing the stability of the pose estimation over time. And of course, we can use pose estimation of objects to do things like augmented reality and making games and so forth out of it. Once we have some estimate for the gravity vector. Okay, and then our primary interest is, in our lab at least, is robotics. So here we have a human demonstration on the left. On the right-hand side, we're tracking both the object and the target, and then we can put the poses of the object in the target reference frame and use that to train a robot to mimic that behavior. So again, we have a human demonstration, and then we can track not only during the demonstration, but we also can track in real time as the robot is executing to compare the pose of the object with respect to the demonstration. And so this is object-centric imitation learning, and it allows us to learn how to execute these tasks in a way that allows easy cross-embodiment from the human movement to the robot movement, and even to other robots as well. We've also collaborated with other teams that are doing things like insertion. So here we have a plug and a socket. We run foundation pose on the plug. We run it on the socket. We have two poses, and then those are used to tell the robot how to move to do these sort of like high precision manipulation tasks. And you notice that there's almost no texture on the plug, and the socket's even hard to see. So foundation pose is pretty robust to these situations where you don't even have much texture. So maybe we're actually making progress after all. So even if the video at a high level looks similar to what we might have been able to do 10 years ago, underneath the hood, there's a lot more machinery going on, right? A lot of sort of fancy processing in terms of understanding where objects are in relation to one another and so forth. And so I think we are making actually quite a bit of progress, and it's only going to accelerate in the future. I want to just briefly mention that we do have also a motion generation library for robotics. And so if any of you are in robotics, you might want to give this a look. This allows us to move the robot along paths to in such a way that it's avoiding obstacles. So here you can see the collision-free movement of the robot. And this is a real robot in action where it's able to achieve target poses without colliding with the obstacle in the middle. And the way this works is by approximating the robot with a set of spheres. And then once we have the robot approximated by those spheres, then in real time we can estimate the collision with respect to the scene. And efficiently. And the way this technique works is by trying a bunch of possible paths in parallel, and that can be very time consuming. So of course you're running in the GPU to do it efficiently, but there are also ways to use neural networks to see that motion optimization. So this is a recent paper that we have talking about that part of the system. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is depth estimation. So many of you have worked with depth cameras, and we've been heard in previous talk about the challenges with depth cameras. And on the left-hand side, you can see a 3D reconstruction of a scene using RealSense, where the accuracy is maybe not quite as good as we would like. And on the right-hand side, just kind of giving you a sneak peek of a method that we've been developing, a stereo-based method that is able to get pretty high accuracy. You can notice how flat the table looks here, right? So it does a pretty good job in general of maintaining planarity. And this is another scene. On the left-hand side is a Z stereo camera, and on the right is our method. And again, you can see it does a reasonable job of preserving straight lines and planes and so forth, and as well as object boundaries. So this is a typical result that we have where you might wonder if this is ground truth. It's fairly accurate in terms of dealing with the thin wires in the back, as well as the curves in the mug and so forth. And so this is just a sort of a teaser, and that high accuracy stereo is coming, and we're working on it, and we're hoping to release this before too long and make this available to the community. It's just a stereo network, so the input on the left is just left and right images, and on the right is an example depth map output. Okay, so in conclusion, robots need to be aware of their surroundings. So we talked about object pose estimation and scene reconstruction, and these are needed for things like obstacle avoidance, for collision-free control. And lessons learned is, synthetic data from what we found is pretty much all you need, at least for training. That 70-row gap, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty much, I don't know if it's completely closed, but it's narrowing to the point where it's not really of much concern anymore. At least that's what we're finding. And foundation models are very powerful, and especially with transformers and all the latest developments with neural networks and so forth, that we've been finding that it is possible now to have these networks where there's no post-training needed. You can download the code, you can download the weights, and it works for novel objects that's never seen before. And neural reconstruction, as we've seen, is a really game changer in terms of the accuracy that you can achieve. So I think there's a lot more that needs to be done there in terms of research and making that practical. But the early results seem very promising from what we've seen. And of course, there are lots of applications for these types of techniques. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks a lot, Stan, for amazing talk with many impressive visuals, images, and videos. And thanks also for joining so late. Stan is in Seattle now, so it's what, like 2 a.m. or something, right? 2:30.
Yeah,
so you will go for the time. Yeah, we have maybe time for one quick question. Do we have any?
Thanks for the great talk. I was curious, so you showed the demonstrations with foundation pose. What type of cameras did you use there? So depth sensor, and is it a real time, or was the demonstration recorded after the video?
Yeah, great question. So typically we use whatever's on hand. So RealSense is a common one that we've been using. I think we've also tried the Azure Connect, and we've used the Z camera also using its depth. And we found that it's fairly robust to noise in the depth image. So so that's not a huge issue. As far as real time goes, some of those videos I showed are definitely real time. Others I would have to check, but we can run it in real time. So it sort of depends on how it's set up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Stan. And with that, let me invite Jakob Engel, who will give the next invited talk. Jakob is Director of Research Science. I think that's how it is called. And he was one of the main initiators and supporters of the Hot3D dataset that we will be introducing later. So he's part of the project ARIA team. And today he will be speaking about contextualized AI and how or what role does object pose estimation and tracking have in that. So with that.
All right, thanks so much, Thomas. All right, I want to talk about always-on egocentric machine perception for contextualized AI. We have entered the age of AI. It's a simple statement. I think the progress over the last 2 years has been amazing, and everybody here would agree with that. Modern foundation models generalize across tasks, but more importantly, LLMs are today able to interact with us humans the way that other humans would. So not only have we started to get to a point where foundation models are useful across a wide range of things, including of object pose estimation, as we just heard, but also can interact with humans the way that humans do. But one thing always has been true and will remain true is that any model is only as good as the data it is trained on, or more precisely, is only as good as the data it has access to. So what is that data for AI agents these days? Well, the first source of data is the most obvious one. That is what I call world knowledge here. Most of these models are trained on what effectively is available on the internet. So that's the training data. But then nowadays, they also have access to everything or things that are available through effectively digital APIs, right? So if you use ChatGPT, if you use sort of like Meta AI on a headset, actually in the background, it'll do a web search to get the information it needs in order to answer your query. The second source of information that I call personal digital context is the one that we are starting to get more and more into now, which is digitally available information that is private to you or is like contextually meaningful. Things that are in your emails, chats, calendar, documents. As we start seeing these LLMs being integrated into software, into chats, into operating systems, they'll have more and more access to provide service to you based on this type of contextual information. But then there's a third source of information that I think is critical in the long term, and that is actually the hardest to get. And that's what I call physical personal context. What's around you, how you're interacting with the world, either now or in the past. And the way we get that is effectively through machine perception. So physical context is necessary to, I think, make personal AI assistants truly useful. And is necessary to get them to answer, all the kind of questions that you see on the slide, like where did I leave my keys, where did I park my car? I think that's one of the things that Meta Ray Ben can do now or fairly soon. What dishes can I cook with the stuff that I still have in my fridge? Am I doing enough exercise, right? Like all these things ultimately require context about the physical world, how you're interacting with it, where you are right now, and so on. The way I like to think about this is that in the long term, things like Meta AI can evolve into your own personal executive team of AIs that not only are world-class experts at the role that they play, being like doctors and fitness coaches and fashion advisors and whatnot, but also know and have learned what you like and what you dislike. That know what's around you, what you're doing right now, or what you've been doing sort of like in the past. That know what you know, so they can effectively communicate with you and don't keep like reminding you of things that you're perfectly aware of. And most importantly, that have been working with you for years, so they really start knowing you and start being able to help you whenever you need their help very effectively. And for that, we need always-on egocentric machine perception. There's two key words in that. First, always on. So the point here is that in order to make these models really, really useful, they need to be able to continuously capture context, to have the information available when they need to answer a query or remind you of something that, for example, you're not aware of. There's a bit in contrast to how these things work currently, where you explicitly take a picture, for example, and then get some information about that. Second, it's egocentric, right? It's from the viewpoint of a human. In our case, that's from headsets. There is another version of egocentric, which I want to call out here, which is from the viewpoint of a robot. There's a lot of similarities between those two, right? It's basically seeing the world and interaction with the world from a viewpoint of an agent interacting with the world, whether it's a human, whether it's a robot. I think there's some actually really interesting things that are going to get very going to get a big boost from this over the next couple of years, and those are things like imitation learnings, as in learning from humans how they interact with the world, transferring that to robot, and I think Stan talked a bit about that in the presentation before. But I want to focus here on egocentric machine perception from the viewpoint of humans. All right. I want to introduce Project Aria for that. So Project Aria is a research device. It's not a product. It's purely meant to accelerate machine perception and AI research. It's a pair of glasses that has a lot of sensors on there. It has an RGB camera. It has 2 wide field tracking cameras. It has eye tracking in there, so you know what the person is looking at. It has IMUs, barometer, magnetometer, microphones, and so on. Plus, it is all in a form factor that only weighs 75 grams, can record data for over an hour, and really allows to use it while you're naturally interacting with the environment and doing what you would do every day. Here's an example of how some of this data looks like. This is from the Ego Exo dataset. And you can see the RGB camera, you can see the left and right SLAM camera, which provide additional field of view. You can see the eye cameras that allow to observe what the person is looking at. And it also has non-visual sensors like microphones, 2 IMUs, barometer, thermometer, magnetometer, and so on. It's a recording device only. It records raw sensor data for research, right? Either to train models or to test algorithms or both. It doesn't have a display. It doesn't have on-device compute, or at least no significant on-device compute. It's really there to support research labs. We're giving it out to research labs across the world. In addition to recording raw data, we also provide a set of what we call machine perception services. So these are basic algorithms that are very useful to build on top of, and where we leverage state-of-the-art technology that we have in order to make that available to everybody using these devices. That includes 6 locations, so we have some really good SLAM systems running in the background, 3D point clouds coming from that, eye gaze, as well as palm and wrist tracking, so you get like a 3D idea of where the hands of the user are. As well as perfect calibration, sensor models, time synchronization across all these sensors. So everything that your machine perception heart desires, we have it here. Combined, the data looks like this. So this is all computed just from a headset. There's a point cloud of the environment. You can see the head motion very accurately being tracked, and you can also see the red ray that represents the eye gaze. It represents like what the person is looking at in a couple of diverse activities. Talking of data sets, so we have a couple of data sets. These are just 3 relatively new ones. There are more. One of them is Hot3D that Tomas talked about. The other 2 that I want to briefly mention here are Ego Exo 4D. Ego Exo 4D is a collaboration between Project Aria, FAIR, and 14 universities across the world, capturing data for skilled human activity understanding, everything from rock climbing to cooking to bike repair. It has, I think, 1,500 hours of video, which is about 200 hours of activities, with a lot of different annotations for all sorts of benchmarks that are organized on top of this base data set. The second data set I want to mention is called Nymeria. This one is actually an ECCV paper this year. It's about capturing human motion in the wild. So this is focused less on hands and focused more on the rest of the body. Here's an example sequence of how that looks like. Let's see. Okay, it doesn't play. Here's some more sequences of how it looks like. So it contains a lot of recordings of a person doing things in an everyday environment, in 50 different houses, doing everyday activities with full body pose ground truth. So it contains the entire ground truth for the entire skeleton pose of the person, as well as several types of language annotations on what they're doing and so on. And then third is the Hot3D dataset. Just going to show a video here. Prithvi and Sindi are going to talk about this more in the next session. This is about 14 hours of data captured again with ARIA. You can see, the visualization on the right has again eye gaze, poses, point clouds, plus then ground truth for hands and objects to focus on hand and object tracking. Okay, some of the research we do in the lab. So we focus on egocentric machine perception research holistically. So we're trying to get as much physical context as possible of these egocentric devices like ARIA glasses. This video shows shows an example of what we can currently get with the various technologies that we have. Everything you see here is computed just from a pair of glasses, an ARIA device that the person is wearing while going around their flat in Redmond, Kirkland, in Seattle, and interacting with a couple of objects, going through different rooms. And you can see that not only do we get a real good reconstruction of the environment with some bounding boxes of objects that are being detected, but also we can track how the person's interacting with objects. I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a bit. So to go a bit through the current of different, or the different technologies that go into that. The first main layer that we're looking at is human motion. This is what we use the NVIDIA dataset for. The point here is that human motion isn't arbitrary, right? Human motion follows common patterns. It relates to the environment you're in, right? If you're sitting down, there's probably a chair below you. And those can be learned. So a recent work that we did on that is called HMD2. This is about environment-aware motion generation or motion estimation from an HMD. The input to this is effectively, again, data from a headset, a pair of glasses, 6 of directories, RGB images, and point clouds to represent the environment. And then the output is actually full skeleton pose and orientation of the person, representing what they're doing. And you can see in these examples, so these are all examples of actually estimated motion from just a headset, that we can get a reasonably accurate representation of what the human is doing and how they're moving, just from the data on the headset. The interesting point here is that a lot of this is not directly observable in the images or in the sensors. So there's a lot of nuanced correlations that the model learns between your exact head motion, how that swings up and down, left and right, and what that means to how your legs or how your arms are very likely moving. It's very impressive, actually, that this is possible at all. The second area that we're focusing on is reconstruction or semantic reconstruction. The one method I want to point out here that we published about a year ago is called scene script. The idea here is to take a reconstruction or a point cloud level reconstruction of the scene that we get from ARIA, encode that, and then train a transformer model, an autoregressive transformer model, to decode that directly into a language representation of the scene. Language representation in the sense that it has commands that say, where's there a wall, where's there a window, where's a table, where's a door, and so on. This really builds on sort of the results that came out over the last years and the power of transformer models and how they're able to really effectively operate on tokenized representations of the world. This is an example of how this looks like in a Quest device. So you can see the point cloud being built from a SLAM system. It's just a structure for motion-based point cloud, and then that gets encoded and decoded in this kind of tokenized representation of the world. These are not, perfectly matching models, but they're rough representations of the environment, focusing on like main important objects like doors and beds and nightstands and so on. We can also replicate this at a much, much larger scale. I think this video, let's see if it plays. So this is a semantic segmentation of objects in an entire office building where our team works in London, showing a whole bunch of meeting rooms, but then hundreds of chairs and tables and doors and plants and windows and so on that have been detected. This is, I think, a 9-story building. The recording that was used to actually do this reconstruction is, I think, 4 hours of somebody just walking around the building, run SLAM on it, run effectively 2D semantic segmentation, paint the point clouds, cluster them, and we get these really nice 3D object bounding boxes of the entire building. There's a lot of context, right? Like this basically tells any potential AI agent what's around you, how to get from A to B, and so on. All right. Most importantly, I left this one to last, is tracking interaction with objects. So, human motion is great, super important. Reconstruction of the static environment is super valuable and actually provides a ton of context. But how you as a human are interacting with objects is probably the most meaningful bit to provide context for AI agents on what you're doing. I want to tease here a project that we're currently working on. It's called Project Midas. And the goal of this project is to index and track every object that you as a human interact with in an open world setting. What you can see here is an example. On the left, it just shows the egocentric view of the headset. And then on the right, you can see images being added of all the objects that the user is interacting with. They're not only indexed, but they're also tracked in 3D. So on the left, in the left view, you can see these like prompts rendered in 3D above where the object currently is. We're only doing 3DOF tracking here, as in like the position, not the orientation, because we wanted to work for any object that you interact with, including non-rigid ones, right? Like chips, bags, clothes. And so tracking those in 3D, as in roughly using the center of gravity as their current position, is still possible, while orientation starts getting very ill-defined very quickly. But ideally, right, like for rigid objects, you'd absolutely want a full 6DOF pose for these objects and be able to reconstruct them on the fly, and not just track their 3D position. So why focus on this kind of human-object interaction tracking? I think there's three main reasons for that, why I think this is actually a very useful formulation going forwards. Number one, it's really important or really valuable contextual signals for AI assistants, right? Like what objects you interact with, where you carry them, where you left your keys is actually useful. Number two, it's an effective way of keeping a model of the environment up to date. So if you think about it, every single object that's in your house probably got there by you or somebody else in your family having moved it there at some point in time, right? Except if you have cats and they move things around as well. But the point here is humans are the primary agent of change in the world, and tracking a model of the world, actually a good way of doing that is by tracking how humans change the world, right? So it's a good way of keeping a model up to date. For example, right, like if you want to know what's in your fridge, well, you or somebody else in your family probably put everything in there, took everything out there. What's in your fridge? You can't see it because the fridge door is closed, but it's a function of what you put in, what you took out. Number three, it's as objective as possible, as in it's a physically observable thing and it avoids early interpretation. So there's obviously a large community working on things like action recognition, right? Understanding, are you cooking? Are you cleaning the house, right? Like that's a couple of steps further down the line of interpreting the actual raw physical interactions with the world that you're doing. Tracking and indexing just the raw interactions of a human with the environment is a good way of trying to avoid early interpretation and sticking with sort of the physically observable actual interactions that you have with the environment. And then fourth, it's actually a highly compressive representation of how you interact with the environment over a day. You can do the math of how many gigabytes of video you can accumulate if you were to run cameras for like 8 hours in a day. It's a lot, but just indexing either in some low-dimensional 3DOF or 6DOF space, or just in English language, summarizing what are the interactions that you had throughout the day. It contains a lot of the important context, but it's a lot more compressive. All right, so the system I showed earlier consists of two main pieces. First, there is a network that we trained that just does in-hand object detection. So what you see here on the left is just a pure output of that network. It's a retrained version of mask RCNN, so not particularly fancy in that sense, but it works really, really well, right? It's just trained to detect the hand and the object that the hand is holding, if it's holding a hand. And you can see it here, right? Like these are all objects that it hasn't been trained with. And it works most of the time. It does make some mistakes, but it is quite robust and can track effectively what you interact with. The second major piece in the system is what we call spatiotemporal reasoning. So that's a component that basically expresses all the priors that come in that you can add on top of this like raw signal extracted from the video. Those are things like semantic priors. Where are you most likely to put an object? Or what objects are you likely to be carrying around? As well as basic physical things like object permanence, as in if you put an object somewhere and you don't move it, then it's probably still where you put it. As well as doing instance reassociation, i.e. reassociating an object that you've touched before. Here's another example of that in action. Again, on the left, you see the egocentric view, and on the right, you see the output of the spatiotemporal reasoning component that now indexes where all the objects are being carried, right? So this is, again, all unseen objects, all new objects, a wide collection of things, and basically carrying objects from one place to another. And on the right, you can see effectively a map of all the objects being built up. Last but not least, this is a slightly more realistic example. So this is a collection of sort of like clips that we collected throughout the day, effectively representing a timeline of all the points in time when a person interacts with their laptop. It's focusing on one particular object, as in the laptop, right? Because that's a very important object. If you lose it, you have a problem. Showing right on the left, again, the egocentric views. On the right, effectively just the current location of the laptop in the office on a map. And then on the bottom, there's a timeline of all the points in time when you interacted with that laptop, picking it up to go to a meeting, forgetting it in that meeting room, picking it up again, and so on, right? But you can hopefully start seeing how something like this might be very useful for an AI system, because it's effectively a superset of what allows you to answer where you left your keys, where you left your car, or just what objects are actually important to you, and knows that. Right, I want to end with some of the key challenges that we find in this problem formulation and in this line of research. First off, we're working with an open set of unknown objects, right? The goal here is really to track everything that humans interact with. It's a wide variety of things, and yeah, it's a very, very broad set of things. Second, interactions are obviously very complex, right? Like we're focusing right now on a very simplistic way of you're picking up objects, you're dropping off objects, you're storing objects in some container. But otherwise, there's a lot more complex interactions that you have with objects, and representing that is challenging and likely requires to go to some very generic or very flexible representations, like again English language as a description of what you're actually doing and where you leave things. Third, I alluded to that a bit across the various videos, limited observability. So you are going to miss information, right? You are going to not see everything. You're going to have blind spots. You're going to have to extrapolate and fill in the gaps, right? Like if an object disappears and your hand was just close to a backpack, then probably you put the object in the backpack, but you don't necessarily see exactly that. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of gaps in information and work your way around that if you really want to solve the full end-to-end challenge. And then the last one is compute and bandwidth constraints, right? Like glasses are small, you can't fit a lot of sensors on there, you can't fit a lot of compute on there, you can't send all the data into the cloud because you have limits on bandwidth. So you're quite limited there. Right, so to the very end, so this is again the video that I showed in the very beginning, but showing just the part that where you interact, or of the user's interaction with objects. It starts off, and you can see that on the top you can see a representation of the current state estimate of where objects are. On the bottom you can see the input videos. And you can see that it starts off with the user picking up a book, so you can see the book is with the user. The book was on the table, and the user picked it up. We're also modeling things like containers. So at this point, the book got picked up, the earbuds got picked up, they both got put into a backpack, and the backpack is still being carried by the user. And then the system continues like this and tries to keep track of effectively where did you put all the objects that you interacted with. It does start making some mistakes. So if I let the video play, right, like it will miss that this can is actually being dropped off here. it still thinks the mug is with the user. It's not, it's on the table. So this gets exactly to the point of you're missing information and you're going to have to figure out how to deal with those gaps. All right, and with that, happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jakob. Are there any questions in the room?
Hi, thanks for the great talk. In the key challenges slide, you mentioned touch multiple times. So do you have any thoughts on how to capture tactile data? I think that's also very interesting from the interaction point of view. So can you share your thoughts on that?
Tactile data. Unless you want to wear gloves, it's going to be hard for a human. But I do think there's a lot of promise in using wristbands as an additional data source, right? Like smartwatches effectively. They really help with hand tracking, for example. And potentially they can get more information. I think Mark talked about last week about a neuromorphic interface, as in you can get other information about your hand interactions from that. It's not directly touch, but it's certainly related.
No, got it. Thank you.
Hi, I have a quick question. Small technical question on the last thing that you showed. Are you reconstructing the 3D of the object as well, or is just like a 2D visualization?
So we're estimating the 3D position of the object, not the 6DoF position. So we're just estimating effectively the coarse XYZ position, right? We're not estimating the orientation.
And a quick follow-up. Are those approaches specialized to the ARIA glasses, or can they be used also, I don't know, for YouTube videos?
So we are using all the three cameras. So we're somewhat relying on stereo, right? For example. So for that, they're going to work a lot better with ARIA glasses. I mean, this is one of the things we want to motivate by building ARIA and bringing it out, giving it out to the community in the first place, is actually to make use of these additional sensor sources, right? So we're using, for example, we're heavily relying on the SLAM system that uses the IMUs. We're somewhat relying on the multiple cameras for like wider field of view. So without those, it's going to work a lot less well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other?
All right, thanks everyone.
Okay, cool. So thanks a lot again, Jakob, for the great, inspiring talk, showing how object tracking can be useful in real-world applications. Now we are moving to a presentation about the 2024 edition of the BOP Challenge. And this year, we also try to make a few steps towards like more practical, model-free setup. And yeah, that's what we'll be discussing now. So starting from basics, BOP stands for Benchmark Object Pose. But from the very beginning, it also stands for Big Organized Party. And this is more true than ever this year. In fact, the BOP team doubled this year. We have new members from NVIDIA, from Toronto, from Prague, Germany, and Korea. And since this was really a true team or even a community effort, we will have multiple people presenting their work streams. So after this introduction, we will have Stefan, Sindi, Prithvi, and Taeyeop presenting the 3 new datasets that we are adding to the BOP Challenge. Then Nguyen and Martin will go into details of this year's edition of the challenge. Then Sungphill will present results on Hot3D and the other 2 datasets, Handal and Hope, results of their method GenFlow. And then Martin will give a sneak peek what's coming next for BOP. So we are running BOP since 2017 with the mission of capturing state-of-the-art in object-centric vision tasks. We typically assume that the evaluated method is provided an RGB, RGBD, or monochrome image as input, potentially also 3D models of the target objects. And then the three primary tasks that we evaluate are 2D detection, 2D segmentation, and 6DoF object pose estimation. And these three tasks are also reflected in a new logo of BOP, which was designed by Stephen Tyree from NVIDIA. And yeah, I think it's great. You can see the bounding box for 2D detection around the B, the green line for segmentation around the O, and my favorite is this 3D touch on the P, which makes nice like 3D sensation there. We focus on two main setups when evaluating these tasks. The first traditional one is scene object setup, where methods are provided images and models of the target objects during training. And since last year, we also focus on the unseen object setup, where methods can pre-train on some big data sets, but the information about the target objects is provided only during short onboarding stage, which we constrain to be maximum 5 minutes on one GPU. BOP currently offers 15 datasets in a unified format, evaluation methodology for various flavors of the tasks. We have online evaluation system, we organize regular challenges and publish reports with the results, and we also develop and maintain a Python toolkit for data loading, evaluation, and visualization. There's a list of the publications that we have prepared so far. We also maintain the BOP website, which is kind of the mission control center for the whole benchmark. You can find all the resources and data sets and the leaderboards there. You can also download all the submitted results. So this makes comparing your new method very easy. You download results of all the relevant methods you want, and you can directly compare with them. You can visualize their estimates we provide, or you can download the actual raw results, what people submitted. And we see the growth of the community also on the online traffic. So in the last 12 months, the BOP website was viewed around 250,000 of times, which is 70% more compared to the previous year. So since the very beginning, from 2017 up until last year, everything was happening. The whole BOP evaluation was happening on 12 datasets that we now started to refer to as BOP Classic. 7 of these datasets we selected for the main evaluations, and we refer to them as Classic Core. These datasets include objects or object models for almost 200 rigid objects. They have over 700,000 RGBD training images, over 100,000 test images, and all the images are annotated with ground truth object poses. Now I will quickly summarize what has been happening from 2017 up until now, and I will show it on the progress and the model-based 6D object localization, which is our original task on which we are still evaluating. So the top left plot shows the performance of the top performing methods which operate on RGBD images and which were the winners in all the respective challenges. So at the very beginning, the first years, 2017, 2019, we saw that the classical methods, by classical I mean they didn't do any learning, and those methods operated mostly in RGBD and D methods, and kind of heavily dominated over all learning-based methods. Specifically, the best methods were relying on point pair features, which is a simple but effective idea from Bertram Drost from 2010. And there the idea is to just sample random pairs of points in a point cloud of the scene and describe them using the orientation of the normals and distance of the points, and using the descriptors for voting for a pose. And so these methods were dominating up until 2019. The main reason why deep learning methods were not very good on these datasets was that we just didn't have sufficient number of training images that would be annotated with 6DoF poses. So in 2020, we decided to join the development of Blender Proc. We have few core offers of the renderer here. And we provided 350,000 photorealistic training images annotated with ground truth poses. And also, thanks to these images, the deep learning methods finally caught up and started outperforming the classical methods. In 2022, we saw that the GDR NPP dramatically improved both accuracy and speed. So the first winner in 2020 was COSIPOSE. That was the first deep learning winner. But you can see that it improved accuracy a lot, but it was very slow compared to the classical methods. And now GDR NPP, 2 years later, quite dramatically improved both accuracy and speed. In this year, we also started evaluating 2D detection and segmentation, since these are key components of a vast majority of recent pose estimation methods. Here later, in 2023, GPose, which is kind of a refined version of GDR NPP, improved additionally accuracy and brought the speed back to the 2017 level. So if you plot a curve connecting all the blue crosses, you see that we did kind of arc there. So the community started focusing more on accuracy, and then once the accuracy was kind of sufficient, we were going again for speed. And yeah, that's kind of expected. That's how research often works. And this year, in 2023, we also introduced 6D localization of unseen objects as a new task. And here the difference is that the methods don't have any information about the target objects at training time and need to onboard it during the short onboarding stage. This is how the leaderboard on this task looked like last year on the task of model-based 6D localization of seen objects. This year we have even more entries. I think that now we have something around 70 methods evaluated on all the core datasets. And we have this analysis. You can see properties of the methods and their sorted scores. So this could be like, this should be a good starting point when writing evaluation section in your papers. So to quickly summarize the main messages, the accuracy on the discussed task improved by more than 50% since 2017. And we see that the dominant pose estimation pipeline these days has 3 stages. Methods usually start with something like 2D detection, segmentation, methods like YOLO. Then there's a coarse pose estimation stage, and that is usually followed by some pose refinement. We also can see that the synthetic to real domain gap is virtually closed. So we see that if methods train on the photorealistic images, they achieve just slightly worse accuracy compared to when they train on the photorealistic plus real images. If you have depth images available, we see that usually methods improve by around 10%. But yeah, if you don't have depth, it's not the end of the world. The accuracy of the RGB only methods is pretty good these days. And another thing that we started seeing gradually are the limitations of the BOP classic datasets. So the first is that the scores on these datasets are slowly getting saturated, especially on the scene object setup. And also these datasets consist only mostly of isolated single view images and don't really reflect what we see these days almost everywhere in industry, either in AR, VR, or robotics, where you typically have multi-view setup either on the headset or on robot, or just a multi-view setup around assembly line. And almost always you have temporal data. So we wanted to address that and come a bit closer to what's happening in industry. And that's why we decided to collect 3 new datasets that we integrated into BOP. We have one dataset, Hot3D, already mentioned by Jakob, from Meta. And then we have Handel from NVIDIA, and the second edition of Hope from NVIDIA and TU Dortmund. I won't go into details. We will have dedicated sections on these where you will learn more. And I'll just maybe say something more about a high-level story. So with these data sets, we are trying to make a step towards multi-view for some data sets, but for all data sets, 6D object tracking. So all the data sets include videos annotated with ground truth 6D poses. Currently in BOP we use only selected frames from the videos for the evaluation, because our evaluation methodology is not ready for tracking yet, but that's coming in the next years. And then the second step we are trying to make here is towards model-free setup. So all these free data sets, let me play this again. So all the free data sets include special video sequences that we call onboarding sequences. And we have these sequences in two different types. So we have static onboarding sequences where the object is standing upright and upside down on a desk. So this is a type of sequence which is very convenient for 3D object reconstruction methods. You can just directly feed it to something like NERV and get pretty nice models. But the disadvantage of this type of onboarding setup is that as, for instance, AR/VR user is not very convenient to like place every object on a desk and walk around. It's just a bit annoying. So to make it a bit more natural, to go a bit towards a bit more natural setup, we also have the dynamic onboarding sequences where the object is seen as being manipulated by hands. So the AR/VR participant takes the object, looks around, inspects it from all viewpoints. And so clearly, while being more natural and convenient for the user, it's much more difficult for the 3D object reconstruction methods to get a reliable 3D model from these. Another update on datasets is that we moved everything to Hugging Face because the server in Prague was not powerful enough to accommodate all the download requests. So that's just to make the experience smoother. And so now we are going for a deep dive on the Handel dataset that will be presented by Stefan, who is, I believe, already online. I can see you.
Yes, hi, Thomas.
Let me just maybe somehow show you here so everybody can see you. Okay.
Hi, everyone. This is Stephen Tyree from NVIDIA. I'll be presenting two of the new data sets for this year's challenge, the first of which is Handel. Can you move to the next slide? The Handel data set was collected by Andrew Guo during an internship with our team at NVIDIA. The initial version was published at last year's IROS. The object set was selected to encompass a wide variety of robot manipulable kitchen and household tools like hammers, spatulas, whisks, and power drills. You can see these in cluttered natural scenes with lots of distractor objects. Next slide.
Okay, sorry. Trying. Okay.
Yeah. For the BOP challenge, we collected a second version of the data set using a 40-object subset of the original, spanning 7 categories. We focused on cluttered scenes with an average of 5.7 objects per scene, plus distractor objects. The data set contains 70 multi-view videos for a total of nearly 90,000 pose annotations. We also have high-quality textured meshes for the Handel dataset, thanks to the work of an artist team at NVIDIA that professionally scanned, reconstructed, and textured each object. Next slide. The dataset was acquired using RGB-only videos from iOS devices. After arranging a multi-view scene, the camera operator circled the scene while making up and down motions to ensure a diversity of camera angles, both for scene reconstruction and for challenging pose views. Next slide. During the annotation process, we began with Colmap to estimate camera poses for the sharpest keyframes from each video. We followed that with nerf scene reconstruction using instant NGP, and we exported depth maps from the nerf reconstruction. As depicted on the left side of the animation below, for each object annotation, we made a small number of manual correspondences between the scene point cloud and the object mesh. Procrustes and ICP refinement were used to compute the final pose as shown on the right. Next slide. The second new data set is HOPE version 2. Next slide, please. So the original HOPE version 1 data set that was included a few years ago in the BOP data sets aimed to offer a more accessible and durable alternative to the YCB data set by using 28 widely available toy grocery objects suitable for robotic manipulation. In HOPE v1, these objects were captured in 50 single view scenes from cluttered household and office environments. The resulting data set contained roughly 200 images and 3,000 post instances. HOPE version 2 extends the original data set by adding 7 multi-view sequences of complex and cluttered scenes, resulting in 450 test images and nearly 9,000 post instances. Next slide. The HOPE v2 extension was collected by Anas Gouda at TU Dortmund, where a large robot arena is outfitted with a 50-camera Vicon motion capture system. The system is capable of accurately tracking object movements while allowing ample space for setting up large dynamic scenes. A Zivid RGBD camera was used for visual data collection. The Zivid camera is known for its high accuracy and excels in tasks like bin picking, making it ideal for precisely capturing both color and depth for this data set. Next slide. The 60 object pose annotations in HOPE version 2 were created through a semi-automated process. First, objects were placed into the scene while tracking the operator's hand using the Vicon system. This provides a rough pose, object pose that will later be refined. Next slide. After placing an average of 20 objects, the scene is captured from multiple views using the Zivid RGBD camera. The camera pose is tracked by the motion capture system throughout the process, allowing each discrete frame capture to be assigned a transform in world coordinates. These transformations are later used to build a large point cloud of the entire scene in the same coordinate space as the rough object pose estimates from the first step. Next slide. Finally, a manual refinement step aligns 3D object models to the 3D point cloud. Refinement is done for the entire scene at once rather than frame by frame, since we have world coordinates for each frame. And the object poses are refined from rough estimates, saving time, particularly for these larger scenes. Next slide. Finally, here we show 4 different scenes from HOPE v2. These images highlight the complex variety of object arrangements, lighting conditions, and levels of occlusions that are present in the extended data set. Next slide. Finally, as a quick note, we're also releasing meshes created from the static onboarding sequences for each of the new BOP datasets. The meshes were created using instant NGP for fast nerf reconstruction and rough mesh generation, along with the traditional tools present in Mesh Lab for mesh cleanup and texturing. These mesh reconstructions, including the one in the top right, were generated within the 5-minute time limit for static onboarding. Thanks.
Thank you. So now we are moving to HOT3D.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Prithviraj Banerjee from Meta Reality Labs, and along with Sindi, my colleague and collaborator on this project, we want to talk about HOT3D. You have heard a little bit about it already in the previous talks. It's a brand new benchmark for hand and object tracking. So I would like to start by motivating why we need yet another computer vision data set. The advent of large language models have made development of personalized AI agents easier and more accessible, as you heard before. However, current generation agents do not have access to the physical context of the user. What is the person doing in the real world? And one of our goals is to accelerate the research on egocentric vision applications, such as developing an AI agent based on the data coming from smart glasses. Secondly, we are also interested in developing a dataset which allows researchers to make reasonable assumptions for practical end user applications, such as availability of multiple views from calibrated cameras or the availability of time-synchronized multi-frame data. While it's very exciting to see this large scale of video recordings that are being created using these different wearable headsets, looking at the sheer diversity of objects in these recordings, we are faced with a scaling problem. How do you go about detecting and parsing all the objects in these videos with an eventual goal to develop a contextual AI agent? One solution is to only focus on objects which we interact with our hands. For example, if you're looking at your cluttered desk, we really only care about the objects which our hands touch, such as the laptop, the mouse, or the phone. Hands are like a spotlight on the objects we care about. So to me, it is clear that a development of an AI agent likely requires a robust understanding of hand-object interactions. Unfortunately, the majority of existing datasets focus either on hand or objects independently. And we want to address this gap in the datasets by providing annotations of 3D hand and object pose involving daily use items captured via multi-view egocentric cameras. And we introduced the Hot3D dataset, which I'm trying to see. There should be a video over here. Is it available? Okay. So we introduced a Hot3D dataset, which contains 1 million plus multi-view frames of highly accurate 3D hand and object annotations. The recordings from the ARIA device will also contain RGB and 2 monochrome egocentric views of the scene. And we also provide the SLAM trajectory of the headset, a semi-dense point cloud reconstruction of the scene, and also the eye gaze trajectory of the participant. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first time a dataset is bringing together hands, objects, and eye gaze into a single consolidated dataset. So to give you an idea of the scale of the dataset, I already mentioned that the dataset contains 1 million plus annotated multi-view frame sets. Overall, it contains 3.7 million images across all camera streams spanning 830 minutes. And the dataset contains 19 participants interacting with 33 daily use objects with a cumulative object trajectory exceeding 13 kilometers. And for this dataset, we recreated 3 scenes from daily living. A kitchen scene with a kitchen island and shelf, a workroom scene with a computer table and a whiteboard, and a living room scene with a couch and a couple of coffee tables. And corresponding to each of these scenes, we curated a list of 33 objects. Like for the kitchen, we have the bowl, potato masher, spatula. For the living room, we have the coffee pot, the flask, and dumbbell, etc. And for all these objects, we provide high-quality 3D mesh models with the PBR materials. And this will allow the end user to generate synthetic renderings for both training and inference. By the way, this image is synthetically rendered scene, and I still get surprised by how photorealistic it is. Next, my co-collaborator Sindi will go over the details of how the dataset was collected.
So how did we go about collecting Hot3D? We used a motion capture system called OptiTrack. We built a custom rig with a special area of 2.5 by 2.5 meters, as you can see on the left, where we mounted dozens of OptiTrack infrared cameras to track 3 millimeter markers on the hands and objects. The system then feeds the known and pre-registered marker configurations to the markers seen in the rig. We hit a limitation of the OptiTrack system's pose fitting with multiple tracks, objects, and hands in view. So we had to rewrite an offline pose fitting algorithm to make better assumptions, which improved the poses visibly. We collected the dataset using 2 headsets, the Quest 3 and ARIA, roughly split half and half. Quest 3 is Meta's production headset, and we used a developer version of that. And ARIA glasses, you heard about them before from Jakob. So it's part of Project ARIA, a research initiative aimed at advancing machine perception technologies for future AR glasses. We hope that this will encourage the community to experiment with different domains and possibly domain adaptation where algorithms trained on data from one headset need to adapt to another headset with a different camera configuration. We also provide researchers with a set of resources to jumpstart their exploration with Hot3D. First, the images and the 3D ground truths are easily viewable and available for download with the Dataset Explorer. We also provide an API toolkit GitHub repository with data loading and visualization scripts, along with example Jupyter notebooks. Finally, we have a tech white paper on arXiv, which describes the data collection and post-processing steps in detail. Compared to existing academic datasets used in pose estimation, Hot3D introduces new research problems. Most notably, Hot3D contains multi-view egocentric image streams showing dynamic scenes with hands manipulating objects. Previous datasets contain images of static scenes without hands, typically captured from isolated viewpoints. Besides, Hot3D provides noticeably higher quality ground truth poses. To support research on model-free 3D object tracking and 3D object reconstruction, Hot3D offers reference sequences which show all possible views of each object. We provide static and dynamic onboarding sequences. To enable apple-to-apple benchmarking, Hot3D adds a set of curated 5-second clips with 150 frames in each. The clips have gone through a human-in-the-loop QA process, offering high-quality ground truth annotations for all modeled objects and hands. Besides, they're served in an easy-to-use web dataset format that can be directly loaded through PyTorch. The BOP challenge will be using the Hot3D clips. As we move towards more holistic computer vision research, tracking objects and hands jointly gets us closer to real-world scenarios. Besides, we believe that with hand-object occlusions, it becomes mutually easier to understand poses of objects and hands when tracking both. Hot3D enables evaluation of the joint tracking task as it provides ground truth poses for both hands and objects. This is a step towards connecting the BOP and hands communities, which have been historically disconnected. To facilitate the connection, we will use Hot3D clips in both BOP and hands challenges. We invite you all to visit the Hot3D website for more details and also take a look at the corresponding challenge websites that we are organizing. We'll also be there at the beta booth during the main conference starting Tuesday. We welcome you to stop by and chat with us and talk about this exciting new dataset. Thanks, everyone. And next, I will pass it to Taeyeop, who will present his work on object visibility estimation, which helped Hot3D get high-quality visibility estimates.
Thank you. I'm a PhD student at KAIST, advised by Professor Nguyen Nguyen in Stockholm, and I'm really very happy to join and work with BOP members today, and grateful for the opportunity presented now. So I will be introducing some methods for object visibility on HOT3D. This is joint work with Birchfield, and Tomas. Next page. So the current hand object visibility calculations rely on model scene elements like left image, but tries to account for occlusion caused by unmodeled elements. So you can see the light image red bounding box. So the current system, the limitation is illustrated in the right image. So the bounding box demonstrates the challenge of determining visibility when considering only model scene elements. So our goal is to develop a solution that addresses this occlusion case for unmodeled elements and enhance the accuracy of visibility calculations. So we will introduce some our trials and including some failure case. Next page. So in our first approaches, we try to determine object occlusion by reporting depth information. So we try to calculate object visibility by comparing the rendered depths with estimated depths using state-of-art molecular depth estimation like depth anything with 2 or depth metric 3D. So however, this approach shows unsuccessful due to the temporal inconsistent depth estimation. So the lighting is clearly lost this inconsistency in the depth result. So yeah, next slide. Yeah. So for our second approach, we attempt to calculate visibility using a pixel tracking method. So you can see that we found that this is remain unreliable and challenging result. In another failure to accurately calculate object visibility. So this is an example of one of failure case. So as you can see, the mouse and the blindness have similar colors on monochrome images, and causing the system fails to track the pixel accurately. So next image. So as our final trial, we utilized the recent release SAM2 video model to calculate visibility, and we were finally able to succeed the result. So I will introduce some more details. Next slide. Yeah, this is another example. So yeah, we finally able to get the visibility on the molecular images. So this is another example. Next slide. This is the overview of our framework, and we firstly calculate the visibility and confidence for all the frames using the sample image model, and the second, we select the best frame of visibility and confidence for initialize the same video model, and then we run the same video model to all the frames, and then we finally get the visibility by calculating the number of visibility pixels and invisible pixels. So yeah, this is overview of our visibility method. And next slide. So yeah, our code is available now, so feel free to use it. And yeah, thanks for the attention.
Thank you so much, Taeyeop. And now we're gonna talk about the BOP challenge. So let me first introduce myself. So I am Nguyen. I am a PhD student in at École des Ponts ParisTech, and the BOP challenge is a result of collaboration with many members from both industry and academia, and we call us push team. So what new in the BOP challenge? So as you can see in previous presentation, we have now 3 new datasets that we call BOP-H3. Besides, we have also 2 new tasks, which is model-free and 6D detection. So in the previous challenge, we mainly focus on model-based setting. Why the model-based setting is relevant for warehouse and factory. The CAD model of the object is where the CAD model of the object is often available. Its applicability in the real world is still limited. So this year, we aim to bridge this gap by introducing the model-free task, where the CAD model of the object is not available, and the method needs to learn very quickly the new object from reference video. And we believe that the method can operate in model-free setting, can unlock new application, including AR system capable to prompt object indexing and re-identification. So about model-free task, so we have 2 types of onboarding, so that the method can learn new object, which is static 1, where we have 2 videos showing upside down, upright and upside down. And the second is dynamic onboarding, where we take the object and scan the object on the view. And we have egocentric for Hot 3D and isocentric for handle and Hot V2. And so for the new task, which is 6D object detection, so up until now, we always evaluating with 6D localization because of 2 main reasons. Firstly, we see that the poor accuracy on localization is not saturated yet. And second reason is that evaluating 6D localization require only to calculate the recon rate, which is less expensive comparing to SIGD detection, where we have to calculate both precision and recall. However, this year we moved to SIGD detection. Firstly, because it's more practical, it doesn't require the list of number of present instance for each object. Second reason is that the score for SIGD localization is slowly saturating. And the last reason is that we optimize the evaluation script that can now evaluate more expensive SIGD detection. So we implement the PyTorch version for the toolkit and also the version with using multiprocessing, so it can be very fast. And for the challenge this year, we have in total 7 tracks. We focus only for unseen object. So we define the unseen object setting is the 3 main stage. Firstly, pre-training. The method can train on any dataset, but should not include images or the model of the target object. The second stage, which is onboarding, linear object quickly from within 5 minutes on the single GPU. Given 3D model in model base or given onboarding video in model free setting. And the goal is, so the last stage, which is the inference, learning, localize and detect object in test images. So we have 3 tracks from on both classic, which is SIGD localization, detection, and 2D detection. And for both H3, we have model-based and model-free combined with SIGD detection and 2D detection. So we have in total 4 tracks for both H3. So similar to last year, we provide pre-training set for unseen object. This dataset is originally generated in Megapod using Blender Proc, capturing more than 50,000 objects from Google Scan and ShapeNet. We would like to highlight that we fixed some error in the broken depth and mask from the original Megapod. So now please check it out, the Hugging Face, to download the new version of the training set. And for the evaluation, we use, for SIGD localization, we use a previous year. So we use 3 metric, which is MSSD for survey distance, NSPD for projection distance, and then VSD for the difference between depth map of visible surface. And because we don't have the depth map for both H3, we cannot calculate the VSD, so we keep only MSSD and NSPD for both H3. And so for SIGD detection, we use 2 metric, and the accuracy, which is MAP, which is the average of the 2 metric. And for 2D detection, we use a classical COCO evaluation system, which is IOU and MAP. So where there is one main difference comparing to COCO evaluation is that in both, the method is required to localize and detect only objects that visible at least more than 10% visibility. So if the object is, if the method detects this object, it will not be penalized at false positive. And yeah. So for the challenge, we have 2 main deadlines. The first one is early bird, and the second one, which is the main deadline after CVPR 2 weeks. So we have the reason for this is that besides compensating for the longer than expect in the preparing the BOP H3, we want to align with the CVPR deadline, because we realized that a lot of users when working on the BOP challenge, it mainly focused to submit a CVPR submission. And yeah, so we want to align with the CVPR. Firstly, enable the author can have time to well document the method. Second is the author can only evaluate one for submitting paper and can yield the same result for BOP challenge. And the last one is without worry about that much about losing the label of the state of the art during the last week of the CVPR. And now Martin will talk about more about the results on track 1, with, on the track of unseen object.
Thank you very much. So the first track in the BOP 2024 challenge is the model-based 6D localization of unseen objects. This task has been introduced in 2023, and we have seen a lot more entries this year. So last year there were about 14 entries, and now we have already 49 entries. And here's again the slide which shows the accuracy inference time trade-off between the methods. And this year we have Freeze V2 added here on this slide, which is the best methods on unseen methods, performing twice as fast and coming much closer to the performance of seen objects. So here in the table you can see it performs 12.8 average recall better than the previous winner. And we have actually 12 methods that outperform GenFlow from last year. A short overview, and the authors are here, you can also talk to them, but so Freeze V2 is based on frozen 2D Dino V2 features and 3D GEDI features extracted from the partial point clouds and the model point cloud. The segmentation is based on 3 different methods that are all using foundation models, SAM16, NITS, and CNOS. And on the resulting crop, the other features are extracted, and we back project the 2D features to 3D, aggregate them on the 3D model, and then perform a 3D matching. Finally, this is refined using ICP and a symmetry-aware refinement based on the visual features. So if you compare seen and unseen object pose estimation methods, Freeze V2 would actually rank 11th in the seen leaderboard. So it's only about 6 points away from the seen object pose estimation methods. So still a major drawback since from last year was that the unseen object methods are really slow in comparison to the seen ones. But we have also received methods that are much faster. For example, Co-op this year performs really well in under 1 second. And it still outperforms the winner from last year by being like a lot faster and 7.7 points more accurate. They also submitted an RGB-only method, which performs on par with the RGBD method from last year. Here's also a really short overview of the co-op method. What is interesting here is that they are not only relying on frozen features, but they rely on the pre-trained CrocoV2 networks, which is, you see the kind of task below. So this CrocoV2 network target is to reconstruct one view by seeing 2 views of the same scene and occluding one with missing patches. And yeah, they use SAM6D for detection, and then they match the patch centers of the render templates and the input crops, and then simply generate pose hypothesis by RANSEC and PNP or MACSEC++ in the RGBD case. Finally, they apply an optical flow-based refinement, which is similar to GenFlow from last year, but it doesn't use kind of a more efficient raft structure. Another interesting method is a second placed one in the unseen task, FRT pose. So what they actually do is they train during this short 5-minute onboarding phase that we give each method. And so they train a ResNet 34 model to predict knocks and masks for each object. And yeah, on a very large H100 GPU, you can actually do that in under 5 minutes. And yeah, they generate the training data on the fly using rendered views and paste it on backgrounds. And finally, they insert this pose hypothesis from the ResNet model into the foundation model, foundation pose model. So next, again, we'll talk about the 6D detection task.
So thank you. For model-based SIGD detection of unseen object, we have a similar. We have firstly this introduced this year, and we have 13 entry of 5 methods. And this year, so the SIGD detection, we have similar observation done, similar to SIGD localization. And we see that the method, the top method in SIGD localization is consistent, high in same ranking in the SIGD detection. For example, here we see that Freezy V2 is 5% more accurate than co-opt in SIGD localization. And so the rank between two methods are the same in SIGD detection, while the improvement is a bit different, and 12% in SIGD detection. And about the track 3, we have about model-based 2D detection. We have more than we have 11 entry this year, which is more than 4 entry compared to last year. And all the methods are based on foundation model using either semantic anything or Dino V2, and ongoing use template to get reference features from 3D model of the object. And the best method of this year, which is F3D-T2D, is 19% more accurate than CNOS. So for object detection pipeline, usually start with object detection, object proposer from SAM, and do some feature matching between different templates to get a score across the object. And F3D-2D is using special mechanism to adapt weight for different templates to improve the accuracy. And now we're gonna talk about the winner of the BOP challenge. So we about the early bird award, which for the methods submit before 18 September. And after the workshop, we will have also the main result for the challenge, which will be announced in 29 November.
Yeah, so we haven't actually printed the certificates, but we want to still honor the winners of the overall best method, which is Freeze V2 in the track 1, model-based 6D localization of unseen objects on the BOP Classic Core dataset. So congratulations. And then we want to honor the best RGB method and the best fast method, so under 1 second. Also on the unseen object track, which is co-op, so congratulations. Very importantly, the best open source method, currently still Foundation Pose. So I hope other authors are also considering to open source their code, and congratulations to them as well. And finally, the best method using the default detections. This makes the methods more comparable because they use this kind of the same 2D detections, and then you can better compare the 6D performance. This is FRT Pose, so the online training method.
And so for track 2, which is model-based SIGD detection of unseen object, we have similar observation as SIGD localization. So congratulations to Freezy V2, which is the best method, the best overall method. Congratulations. And then we have the best fast method, and the method used default detection with for co-op from NAVER Lab. Congratulations. And then we have the best open source method, which for Gigapose and from ENPC. And for track 3, which is model-based 2D detection of unseen object, we have on the more classic core. We have the best method, which is F3D to 2D from Netmarble in Japan. And congratulations. And then the best open source method is go for novel instant detection and segmentation net from University of Texas. Congratulations. And now Sungphill will talk about the GenFlow result on both H3 dataset.
Hi, I'm Sungphill from NAVER and author of GenFlow. Together with my co-author, Hyeontae, we prepared baseline for a new dataset. We selected Gigapose plus GenFlow as the baseline method. It is best algebra method submitted in 2023 and strong baseline for unseen object pose estimation in RGB. I prepared a very brief explanation of how Gigapose and GenFlow work. In fact, since the author of Gigapose is here, he can give a more detailed explanation if you need it. And Ben already explained this method. I will skip this slide. What is GenFlow? This figure shows the architecture of GenFlow refiner model. Since it is somewhat complex and we don't need to fully understand it here, it's enough to know that the inputs are RGB and rendered image, and the outputs are optical flow and object pose. From left to right, input image, rendered image, estimated flow, estimated confidence map. GenFlow used optical flow and confidence map to estimate the object pose. When attempting to solve 6 detection on H3 using the previously explained baseline method, we encounter a particular issue with R6D. Currently, most methods, including GenFlow, are implemented specifically for pinhole cameras. R6D contains PCI image streams that need to be undistorted before applying Gigapose and GenFlow. For quick testing, we simply warp image from PCI camera model to pinhole camera model, which has the same width and height as the original camera. Unfortunately, it can be vulnerable to processing objects on the edge of the original image. Perspective cropping applies to in bound force applies to its detection will increase the accuracy. See this part disappeared here. This image visualizes the objective detection result for R6D. To display only meaningful object pose estimation results, we aim to show only those with a confidence score higher than 0.6. As previously explained, due to the distortion process, we can observe that some objects, like this, near the boundaries are excluded from pose estimation. In case of HOPE V2, the objects have rich texture, which allow for higher scores compared to the others. On the other hand, Hyeontae is very challenging dataset because it contains many objects that look quite similar to each other. This is comparison of the score between the class core and the H3. Through this, we can see that the new datasets present relatively more challenging problem compared to the previous ones. Lastly, I would like to present an interesting sample from Hyeontae. In the left image, there are 2 real drills, while none are present in the right image. However, our model estimates the pose of the drill drawn on the box, and we confirmed that, unfortunately, it had a high confidence score. because this dataset does not contain depth information. Avoiding such first positive samples is a difficult task. We have confirmed that the new datasets are more challenging and closer to real-world problems. If you are interested in research on object pose estimation, give it a try. Thank you.
Thank you. So this year we have introduced new data sets and tasks towards more general end-to-end object pose estimation that works within 5 minutes and only takes a 3D model or even just a video as an input. And this is a really important direction, especially for applications such as augmented reality that operate in open environments. However, the model-free task and new datasets also deviate a little bit from other applications, such as, for example, industrial robotics. So we still want to be inclusive to this community and provide like a proper benchmarking tool for them. So our plan is to introduce a new BOP-Robotics core set, like the BOP-H3 set and the classic one. And you can see here in the video a typical kind of bin picking scenario with a robot. And this scenario deviates a little bit from the data sets that we see in BOP at the moment. So what we have there is oftentimes top-down views, 1.5 to 3 meters away. We have quite a restricted pose space, so it's not as open as in other data sets. We can have multiple viewpoints and sensors, and we have multiple modalities at hand. The requirements are also a bit different, so we need really high millimeter accuracy for grasping. We need high recall for motion planning, and very low latency for throughput. So here you can see some examples. They are provided by Intrinsic. And what you can see, the challenges are clutter of similar objects. You have elongated or hollow geometries, lots of symmetries, lack of texture, highly reflective materials, and these get lighted and with strong light sources, and we have exposure changes. Particularly challenging is also stacking. So if you have stacks or piles of objects, pose estimating them. And finally, it's still a bit unclear which sensors or modalities are best suited for those tasks. So finding out what sensor is actually best suited is one of the challenges. We have not been completely oblivious of this. So MVTech has provided the ITOT dataset, which is part of the BOP Classic core. And it actually provides really hard industrial images. In this, you can see some grayscale images here on the right with the GDR NPP results, so 2 years ago. And it works for the better visible objects, but it doesn't have like the 100% recall rate here. And we can also see like the lowest AR scores on this dataset in the whole BOP Classic core datasets. So about 70 for seen and 67 for unseen objects. And yeah, the dataset provides stereo and grayscale images. We also have other datasets like the industrial planoptic dataset from Intrinsic. This was recently published at CVPR 24, and it provides also multiple viewpoints from 13 sensors, multiple modalities, including HDR, structured light, polarized images, and so on. And yeah, also lighting changes and very difficult objects. We want to call for the next BOP challenge for datasets and also support, and yeah, preferably with multi-view and multimodality, highly accurate pose annotations, since this is required to also have like tighter metrics, and yeah, includes the aforementioned challenges from industrial robotics. The future vision plan is to kind of evaluate the 60 pose estimation method, then on this BOP-Robotics track, and maybe choose then the best methods to be evaluated on a real robot in a bin picking evaluation. And we are in talks about this and hope to share more details soon. We will keep you updated in the BOP email group. All right, so in the name of the whole team, thank you very much for attending this workshop and participating in BOP. I think we can still see very strong leaps, and I'm excited what comes next. Yeah, so if you want, please feel free to go back to the posters and talk to the authors of new interesting methods. Yeah, thanks for attending the workshop.